we are, ladies and gentlemen. It feels weird me not saying "Hey now" to start any sort of show, which is what I just did.
That's a little weird, yeah.
I talked about it before we started. I'm like, I think I'm gonna just, you know how Joe Rogan, when he starts the podcast, it's like it's almost already in the middle of a conversation, like they're already talking about something. You have no idea what they're talking about. So I want to kind of do that instead of coming into it and be like, "Hey now, hey now, hey now," because I already get people that complain about that. I was at the shop the other day, and Henry was giving me a rundown of, there's a lot of listeners that come in the store, and he was giving me the rundown of the complaints that he gets about the show. Now, obviously, these people still listen to the show, but he's like, one of them says your music sucks. The other one says you say "hey now" too much. Another one says you're too negative. And I'm like, well, but they're still listening.
They still come in and talk about it,
Yeah,
so.
they're still listening, and they're following directions in the sense of going to Vaper Forge like I tell them to do.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, but where to advertise that, the customers that we get in that say "hey now," they just seem like, I don't know, better customers overall.
They're good old Americans is what they are.
Yeah, they never any problems, everything's fine. That's how we all want it.
So this is our second ever interview podcast in our interview over the line interview series. And we decided what we were going to do is we were going to bring you in on the third one.
Right.
And we were going to have, I'm not going to say who we were supposed to have today. I'm going to wait and make that a surprise. But
I know.
He had a situation come up. So we're like, Tony, I knew Tony would do it whenever we needed him to do because he's a team player. So we moved that up, and here we are to start the Tony show. Now, you've got, and I've said this before, Tony's got a million stories. We call him Tony Gump because his life is like Forrest Gump, the movie Forrest Gump. You've been through a million things. You got a million, and your memory is second to none. So that just adds to it,
Yeah. Sometimes I just don't even tell people stories because I already know they won't believe me.
Yeah, Tony Gump's full of it.
Yeah.
He's full of. So before we get started, because I got some questions to ask you. And I know you had to take notes because that's how much stuff is going on, which is important to do.
Well, I had 36 hours notice, so none of this is
Yeah,
scripted.
that's it.
I just literally sat down this afternoon and just jotted out, notes along the way in my head. So.
Yeah, there's that part too. I do want to give a shout out to our official sponsor of this Over the Line podcast interview series, and that's our boys over at Wild Hair Jerky. Y'all hear us talk about them all the time. They do a phenomenal job. I'm not blowing smoke, dude. This is some of the best beef jerky I've ever had. So what I need y'all to do, I need you to make your way over to Wild Hair Jerky on Facebook. For those of you watching the video, it's right there. You see where they're located. Give them a like. They're getting ready for a grand opening, I guess, if that's what we call it. They're getting all their approval stuff out of the way. They keep you updated with that on the Facebook page. But they send me jerky on a regular basis, and it's second to none. I absolutely love it. And even talking about the Vaper Forge, I take jerky up there all the time. Noah in particular, he's a jerky freak, a jerky connoisseur, and he's also very blunt, so he won't lie to you. So when I took it to him and he said he gave it the stamp of approval, I'm like, okay, this is the real deal stuff. I love it when he sends me stuff. You can go ahead and hop on this train early by going and liking the page. Keep it updated and start sampling stuff. Check it out. See what you like. They got phenomenal flavors. And if you ever need any advice on what to get on the wild jerky front, you just let me know because I know the deal. We even got our wild jerky cups over here, which is very nice. Very nice. They sent us those as well. I got so much wild jerky swag. It's crazy. And then, obviously, Vaper Forge. Tony and Amy, the owners of Vaper Forge, doing fantastic things. They are the very first ones to advertise with the line. I mean, day one.
Yes.
You were one of the first people that I told I even had the job at 99.5.
Yeah, I had to keep hush about that.
And then you had to keep it quiet.
Check this out. Nobody knows. I'm like, okay.
Your response to me was, I want to be the first advertiser.
Yeah.
Like, you had no idea the show could have flopped. It could have been awful, but you were like, hey, I want to be the first advertiser on that show.
I mean, I was like, I knew it wasn't going to totally suck because I had already heard you on the podcast and things like that. So I felt confident about what I was doing, but...
yeah, we were doing a lot of stuff. Oh, also, this show's brought to you by, let's see, Both of These Nuts. That's a candle that I have, as you can see there. It's literally called Both of These Nuts. So
I'm afraid to smell that.
It's
okay, banana nut bread and hazelnut vanilla. I see.
Yeah, okay. If your nuts smell like banana bread, then it smells like Both of These Nuts. Let me light this real quick.
That's interesting.
Try that out.
All right.
It's not bad. Let's go ahead and blow this out before I start up fire.
Okay, Boca D's Nuts.
Both of these nuts.
Both of these nuts. Del Boca Vista.
Yeah.
All right.
So you and I had talked about this for a long time. If I'm not mistaken, you and I probably sat in this room right here and came up with the idea for this interview stuff. I believe we did.
Sort of. We talked about this a long time ago.
Yeah.
Just an idea, but we had 100, ideas how anything was going to happen. But I think it's interesting, and if you get some interesting people on here, I don't think too many people are going to find me as a personality. I'm not on the radio or anything like that, but I know all these guys, and I get what they're trying to do. And I've been trying to help out Andrew, too, and my wife as well has been trying to help, and trying to get things lifted up.
Well, and it's about not necessarily always bringing in people that other people know, but more of people that have a story to tell. And honestly, the field is not that large for me to pull from because I have to bring in people that are going to be transparent. John Bird set the tone in the first episode.
Yeah, I got to be fully transparent now. That's what kind of scares me, but I'm willing to do it. This is the most I've ever told anybody about myself, especially publicly.
Yeah, well, you've never sat it down, and this was John Bird's thing. He never sat down and done it all in one sitting and just kind of unpacked everything, and especially for Bird, he had so much stuff in his past that he had to. It was therapy for the guy, which turned out to be a good thing.
That's one reason why I kind of wanted to do it too, for my own reasons, just to kind of get it off my chest. And there's a few people that know me, and they can maybe see how I became who I am.
So I'm basically Dr. Phil, is what we're saying.
Okay,
I am.
Right.
I am the Dr. Phil of podcast at this point.
Now, as I tell things, there's going to be certain things you might, I'll be like, oh, this guy. I'm just being honest about what happened.
Well, and I know you don't want to miss anything at all, and so that's why you've got the notes too. But I know if we get to the end of this thing and you forgot something, you're going to beat yourself up.
Oh, it's going to happen, but I'll be all right. There's stuff I haven't even written down, and a lot of stuff didn't pass the quote sniff test.
Right.
And the wife and I were talking about, I better not talk about that one. There was a lot of that going on.
Well, let's do this. Let's try to take let's take it this way. Let's start off just about Tony Gump, the man. What about your family? You're married?
Right. Okay,
kids?
I'm married. Yeah, I inherited all my kids. I married a wife that already had kids, so I got 2 sons and a daughter, and I got 4 grandchildren. And if you're on the video, you can see my wife posing with Hulk Hogan. It was a Florida trip we took together where I used to live after I moved here.
So Hulk Hogan's not in your family?
No,
okay.
But I do know him personally. His last name, it's actually Terry Bollea is his name, and I knew his son too. It wasn't like I hung out for dinner with him, but he was like, I knew who he was and, things like that because he lived really close to where I worked.
There's you and Amy and the puppies.
Yep. Those are our little babies right there. Those are the original them. 2. Yeah. And that's my brother, Tom. I wanted to humiliate him because he picked on me as a kid all the time, and I get to pick on him.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, what a winner that is.
That's real good.
That is me in an apartment right after... That was right when we were starting our quest with the vaping industry, and I love that color green, and that was when we decided that was the color we were going with.
That picture is when you decided to go that color?
Well, yes, that was electric green, and I loved it, and it was something different, and where we wanted to put the place, and how nobody else had that color, and it was kind of original, and so that kind of tells that.
How about that?
Yep, that's
more Tony, Amy.
Vape Me, that's us together. Yeah,
these are the
chilling.
Is that a muzzle?
I have, we were just playing around. That's at my mother-in-law or my mom, whatever. That's Amy's mother. We were just chilling over there for an event. Good times.
Yeah. So big happy family. Lots of people involved. Let's go. Let's just start from the beginning. Let's go childhood.
Okay.
Tony's childhood. Where were you born?
I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
Cuyahoga County, June, late 70s. And great childhood. I had 4 siblings. There was my dad's side. He had 3 kids on a previous marriage, and my mom had 1 kid on a previous marriage. And then they both had their divorces. They got together. And then once they were happy and married, then they had me. So I was the only child of my parents together. So all my siblings are half. So they're raising 5 kids in one house. And it was just like, you learn so much. It was the setting. I had all the structure. It was all the right things at the right place to set you up for success later on in life.
Yeah.
Just teamwork. Nobody ate dinner at certain points unless everybody's beds were made and rooms were cleaned up.
Wow.
And if somebody was slacking, then we didn't eat, so we had to go make sure he did it or she did it or so-and-so would help you that week if you helped them do this part next week.
What a structured system that
but
is.
But it was on purpose. It was by design.
And none of us do stuff like that now. And it's not, I say that, and it's not a good thing. Like, households should be more like that today.
There was even the all my sisters got dishes for the next 2 weeks. She'd be like, hey, I'll trade you the dishes for...
You were like bartering soups in prison.
And but that taught us a lot. And I learned out later on in life that was all done on purpose. It wasn't just because my dad was lazy,
Right.
So there was all that. And just the right structure, the right family atmosphere. I couldn't be more blessed with the early childhood. Everything was great.
Yeah.
The only thing, traumatically, John Burr was on here talking about things that happened to him. There's really only a couple of instances that I remember, like in the early ages in the Cleveland area. I was 6 years old playing soccer at a friend's house, and we were just kicking the ball back and forth in his front yard. And here comes we hear this like noise, and we turn around, and then there's this horse just going full speed down the road. And it's got this little girl tied to the right side, like her foot was caught in the stirrup. I don't know much about horses, but she was dangling. And I was a little kid, and I literally saw this girl like a rag doll being like banged around, head hitting the ground.
How old is this girl?
I can't...
6, 7, 8?
I want to say young? Like 8 or 9.
Okay.
She was older than I was, but she was still young. And then I see this car go speed past it. The horse is going nuts, just bolts out. Then it went out into like the tree area. And then it was the parents, I guess, behind the car. The next thing you know, like cop cars, ambulance. She died. The horse, she got her foot stuck in the horse. The horse got freaked out, and he just took off. And I witnessed that as a little kid. It was kind of a shocker.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to school the next day and be like, guys, look what I saw.
Jeez.
I didn't even talk about it.
Well, that's traumatizing as a kid.
That was one incident.
I didn't mean to be showing pictures of your family while you told that horrific story. All these people turned out okay.
Yeah.
None of these
are all
guys.
people. There's a picture. It got my dad, sister, brother. I'm not in that one right there. Those are all older. I believe that was before I was born, or I was not able to go to the amusement park yet.
Yeah.
So
you were at home doing dishes.
Yeah, that's my first birthday. That is one of 2 birthdays I do not remember.
Huh.
So
that's how good your memory is.
Yes. I don't remember my 0 birthday either.
You got past your 2nd birthday and you remember everything.
After my 3rd birthday, I'm solid.
Okay.
Yeah, for some reason. Kind of weird. Now that's payback again for my brother. You
gave your brother the business, didn't you?
No, he gave me so much crap growing up. I mean, pin you down, noogies, the wedgies, you name it, throwing bugs on me. And this is him as a young man, dressed up in my sister's dress and pretended to be a girl as a joke.
Wow.
But my mom snapped a picture of it, and I kept it all these years just in case.
Well, nowadays, that would be totally acceptable.
Oh, of course. I mean, whatever he wants to be. There's me, kind of a little chubby cheek kid.
Little chubby
Looks
kid.
Looks like I'm getting ready to go something. I don't know what I'm doing in that one. But
you're ready to go pimping.
Yeah. I don't know. Was that a pocket on the left?
Dressed like a pimp.
Yeah. So that's just me as a little kid. Carpet stairs. saxophone.
Little musician.
Now we're getting in the territory where I remember that saxophone. That's right around that time when I started.
Don't you get like that? I think a lot of people are like that. I know I am. That there's certain toys that you remember from your childhood. You probably remember more than I do, but there were certain ones. I remember in particular getting I was big into Power Rangers, and for one Christmas, Santa brought me a saber, which was the weapon of the White Power Ranger.
Okay.
And it was, it was a very simple toy. It may have made some sounds or something like this. And I thought that was just the best Christmas ever. Like that was the best gift I'd ever received. It was nothing but a toy sword. Looking back on it, but I just remember being so elated having that toy. And there's a few others that I remember over time, but it's just one of those things.
Well, I mean, there was 5 of us, and we didn't have the Christmases were not monstrous. Okay,
right.
I mean, I'm talking we were cheap living, but we weren't hungry either. It was just if you put something on your plate, you better eat it.
Right.
Kind of thing. So, and it was very structured. Something that kind of sets the tone for later on, though, that happened when I was young was at one time a mom freaked out and she ended up throwing away all of our video games. I experienced the whole Commodore 64 floppy disk to Intellivision at one time, Atari type thing.
Yeah.
Well, she threw away all of our video games. She was stuck every day. She watched the 700 Club with Pat Robertson. I don't know if you're familiar too much about that.
Oh, yeah.
But religiously watched it. She was Christian. I went to church growing up. Good times. But one day we, got home and all the toys are donated or given away. And we had all the big Star Wars dolls and, all of our Intellivision games and everything. And the only game she kept the console and the game. And the only game she kept was one that she played, Burger Time. That was it.
So she actually played one.
She taught me all about hypocrisy at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But the electronics, the gadgets were the devil to her.
All thanks to Pat Robertson.
Yes, when I was 7, she grabbed me by the shoulders and she looked me dead in the eyes and she was like, "One day the TV's gonna be looking back at you," And I was like, "Oh, okay, Mom's lost it. She's crazy."
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of things she's kind of,
She called that one out,
like
didn't
decades ahead of the time,
She's like, now you not only is a TV watching you, but you are willingly carrying the TV around with you as it monitors every aspect of your life.
Yeah, she was the first one to ever tell me that history is only what the winners want you to think it was.
Well, that turned out to be true as well, didn't it?
I mean, kind of ironic, but she did make that statement to me.
How about that?
But I saw a UFO in the backyard.
We're still childhood,
Yep,
growing up.
I was 6 years old. I went in the backyard. This would have been around mid-June. It was days after my birthday. We were on summer vacation, and it was just got dark outside, and I was getting ready to head in, and I looked up, and out in the corner of the sky, clear as day, I saw a round UFO with lights at the bottom. Never told anybody about this,
But were you that type of kid, though? Did you just, all these things happen, you just kept it to yourself?
I thought of every which way that a man could possibly make something to make it look like that. But I was a little kid, and I didn't tell any of my friends. You go to school, "Hey, I saw a UFO, guys."
You get beat up and thrown in the trash can.
For all I know, it was some guy doing a trick on the public. Even to this day, you can go back and research the day and even the year. I've done it. Just there was lots of reports on a UFO in that exact county at the exact time that I saw it that I remembered. And
so you actually remembered down to the day.
Oh, yeah.
You saw it.
Yeah, I remember it because my birthday had just happened, and then it was a few days after that. I don't like to give exact dates.
You're right.
But, yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember clear as day, but there was time, I just didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody about a lot of stuff, but that was the only time I've actually firsthand seen something that was not normal in the sky.
Some of that stuff, I mean, I realize we're only so far with your games being thrown away, watching a girl get killed, seeing UFOs, and you're not telling anybody about this. Like most people, that would cause them to be like go crazy.
Well,
like have a mental breakdown.
What made me sane was just the structure and all the chores and anytime you'd ask Dad for something, he'd be like, "Save your money," or he'd give us projects to do to try to earn it or. Whatever, you need money, go mow down the street. That didn't really happen until we get to the St. Louis side of things. But the girl dragged by the horse, that I almost forgot, like completely forgot about that for a while, just because it was just like so much shock.
Right.
And even my buddy, we never even talked about it. We were just like, dude.
Yeah, when you don't even tell your friends about it.
Yeah.
Do you ever think there was something wrong with you that kept you from telling people about it?
Maybe the thing that I remember, the full video, like it's in my head, like the terabytes are there, the full video, high definition.
Were you afraid of?
The worst part about the whole thing, it wasn't really the sight. It left a big dried, stained trail of blood that was there for even a few days afterwards. They couldn't get it out of the concrete because it was hot outside. It was the summertime. I just remember the sound that the gallop of the horses was the main, like in my head, because I was just so shocked. And then it was the head hitting the ground as it was going around the corner, around the street. Yeah, like it was just like, whoa.
That's traumatizing.
But, when what are you going to do? But I didn't even tell my mom. I mean, I think my mom was like, did you see that? It was just kind of like, it just happened.
Right.
So, anyway, that's one thing. Trying to think of anything else important in Cleveland, really. It was just a great childhood. There's really the 700 Club thing. My mom was just totally brainwashed. I could see why. I later on got brainwashed with some things, but she truly believed all that stuff, and she thought the TV would be looking back at us. Of course, she's nuts, everybody.
Did that something? Is that something that persisted throughout her entire life? Was she always that way?
She always questioned things. Like
I feel like I'm really prying now, and I'm figuring out why Tony is the way he is.
I remember going to her we did the Hands Across America thing in the early 80s on the highway, right? That went through Cleveland to Chicago and across America. And around that time, I remember she took me to vote with her. She went and voted for Reagan in the 84 election with Mondale and all that.
Right.
Reagan and George Bush. But anyway, so we did that thing. She taught me just kind of like American spirit, I guess, and not to believe everything that I saw. She was a big JFK conspiracy. She believed that either the CIA or something else was involved in his killing, and she never accepted the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman, let alone a gunman in the situation. She firmly did not believe in it.
And this is what's crazy, is that back then, for people to look at things in that way, that was not normal. Like you didn't have the internet, you didn't have Google, you didn't have InfoWars or Gateway Pundit. She was relying on gut feelings.
She really was, and it was almost like she had a foresight into the future, and she thought for herself. And she'd see the news or something would be happening, and she'd kind of hey son, I wonder what they're up to. When I was at home sick the day that the Challenger blew up in the sky from school.
Right.
Okay. So after the Challenger blew up, she was like, oh my God. And later on that afternoon, I was at home sick, like literally sitting next to her on the couch, and she leaned forward. I remember looking at her face, and she goes, I wonder if they knew that one was going to happen. And I was just like, I didn't even know, okay, how would they not know? Why would anybody want to blow up anything?
Right.
But she even went as far as to even, well, I'm sure it's just what it is, but she questioned everything just because I think she had caught a few lies along the way. And then she was the one to tell me about the history, never to believe it, things like that.
Right.
So that kind of set the tone for things later, after her death, when I started going on my deep dive to figure out what the heck was going on in this world.
I'm starting to understand why Tony is the way he is, because Tony's you're a very unique individual, and what you're describing to me is what I would view is a mirror image.
Yeah,
of you.
I got to try to stay away from politics because this is more about what I've learned, but
that
set the tone for everything. And she taught me about a lot of stuff, and she showed a lot of love. And the main thing is she was healthy the whole time I was in Avon Lake. She was a smoker. She smoked cigarettes, but we'll get to that later.
Most of our parents did.
Yeah. At the time, I mean, I know my dad even asked her doctor. He told me later that if should she be able to smoke when I'm in the womb, and he said it was perfectly fine. So I think that might have maybe set things up for me for later to have caffeine and nicotine sort of things.
Yeah, this is one of these CNN doctors. Yeah, just mow one down while you're pregnant.
Yeah, and also
Sanjay Gupta told her that.
all the little things too I picked up from my father. Just how he conducted himself. When he would take me to work when I was a little kid, his dad owned a chemical company, and long story, but I'd go to work with this man. I'd be a young boy, and it was like everywhere where we walked, everybody hey Doc, how you doing? Yes, sir. And everybody's trying to look sharp, and I just thought that was the coolest thing, to go. I was like, dang,
Like my dad's important.
Yeah, we went. I remember he took me to this house, and he's like, oh, let's go up there real quick, and we're up this upstairs house, and there's this family that lived there and all that, and he's like, I gotta check on something real quick, and that was my first experience. Well, my dad had a rental. I didn't know what that was.
Right.
My dad's looking over his rental property.
Wow.
But yeah, he didn't lose or make money on that particular one that he took me to.
But he was a smart guy. He tried to do things the right way, and it resulted in him. Was he ultimately a successful guy?
He was successful with what he was trying to accomplish. He wasn't trying to become a bazillionaire. He wasn't trying to start companies. He was just trying to raise 5 kids.
Right.
So put him underneath a lot of pressure. My mom was a handful. She was a housewife. She stayed home, and that helped with the structure. It wasn't like we got home from school and we just went bonkers and did whatever we wanted. Mom was there, and she was just kind of, she had her thoughts about certain things, but the love was there. Great childhood. And if I didn't have that initial structure from the first years of my life, it wouldn't have helped me surpass later on things in life. I would have never been able to overcome some things that I went through. I probably would have just given up, as I say, but it was the initial structure, the chores, the discipline, you would get spanked if you were out of line. No, you don't disrespect your parents, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's so true, and I often think about that as well, in where parents today, including myself, we fail on so many fronts. I try to do what's right most of the time, but it turns out to be a generational thing. The parenting gets passed down from parents to parents to parents to parents, and so. And as time goes on, there's more leniency that's added in.
Yeah.
And it comes from this frame of mind of parents thinking, oh, well, my life was tough in this way, and I want to make sure that my kid doesn't have to deal with it. And that ends up transforming into this lack of structure, if you will. And it ends up doing a disservice to the kids. Again, I'm guilty of it. There's many of you that are listening to this are probably guilty of it as well. I try to concentrate at least on the core things, core values, how you treat people, working hard, chasing your dreams even, and respecting people. But, there are also times where I'm like, I wish I had 3 more kids that I could create this little army that does chores for me all the time.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
But, you're right. Generations change, and people have gotten a lot softer. The language has changed a lot.
Yep.
When I was a little kid, it wasn't like, Dad, don't spank me. I'm going to call Child Protective Services. If I would have even said that, oh, my God.
Or go to your dad and be like, what do you want, brah?
Yeah.
Like these kids do now.
There was one time my brother Tom, the guy that was wearing the dress, he challenged my father. That goes out. This is later on, but he was kind of rebelling. And at the dinner table one night, oh, my God, he stood up and he said, come get some to my dad.
No.
Oh, my God. Yeah, talk about anxiety. No. That was like my first teenage, like at the dinner table, all of a sudden something didn't go right.
You've been a great brother, Tom. It was good to know you.
Yeah.
See,
he ran. My dad chased out. He took off. I went out of the house. He challenged. He wanted the challenge.
Yeah.
And I get that. People challenge along the way. And we had to witness that too, to see what happens when you challenge.
Yeah.
So
you go through, you have very structured childhood.
Yeah.
Great parents. unique parents, but great parents nonetheless that did the right thing in raising you, tried to do the right thing, and providing for the family and all that kind of stuff.
They were more worried about their kids than themselves. That's for sure.
So what happens in your later years, whether that's high school or even after that? Kind of give me some backstory on that.
Yeah, so we moved from Cleveland to St. Louis. I'm 8 years old. I grew up there. A lot of love in St. Louis. Lots of learning. That's really the core of who I am, was that place.
You love St. Louis.
Yeah, I did. I still do certain parts of it, but it's changed a lot, certain areas of it. I was on the east side of the river, on the Illinois side, in a town called Belleville, Illinois. It's like 40,000 people roughly now.
You wouldn't want to live in Ferguson today?
No. Just because of all the crime.
Right.
But no, I mean, whatever. And it was a melting pot of an area. It wasn't like, as far as like ethnicity and religion and race and all that stuff, it was just like a little melting pot, and everybody got along.
Everybody treated each other normally, like that's the way America used to be.
Yeah. So I mean, it started out great when I first moved to St. Louis. 3rd grade, 4th grade. Cardinals are winning. I've talked about it on your radio show before, and I didn't want to talk about it too much here. But yes, my grandfather was good friends with Whitey Herzog, the coach of the Cardinals in the 80s, Hall of Famer. So I got to meet him a bunch. I got to meet a bunch of players. I got to go into special places. I got to get autographs. I got to, it was kind of just whatever. I had players giving me piggyback rides at one point. The stolen base champ of the 80s, Vince Coleman, him and Tim Raines. I don't want to get too much into baseball, but that was really cool. And I went to school and told my friends about that the next day, and they didn't want to hear it for some reason. They didn't like the fact that
you finally opened up and started telling friends about experiences you were having.
It got so bad I had to show a picture one time because they were calling me a liar.
Yeah.
They were just like, this Sunday I went to this cookout, and guess who I saw, and they're like, who? And I tell them, no, you didn't. And I'm like, no, I really did. I swear. But that wasn't that bad. I really didn't get any static, I guess, in the St. Louis area until I did all sports. Okay, every season. I didn't grow up playing video games. It was like you go outside and you play in the dirt. You're playing kickball. You're riding your bicycle. And if there's something wrong with your bicycle, you got to fix it. It was like independent. My dad was like, you're going to be independent.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah. And nobody, if I dropped something, my mom wasn't picking it up.
Right.
It's like, get it,
Nice.
But yeah, getting back, St. Louis was good. When I think of there, I think of sports immediately in my head. Basketball team, baseball, played some tennis, track. I was a sprinter, not long distance. I hated long distance. I tried it. I'd rather not do it. I'd rather be homeless than be a long distance runner. Those people are remarkable.
Right.
And that helped me out later on in life with teamwork, doing all those sports. Of course, I have those moments in my head. If you're into sports, you know what I'm talking about. Like baseball's my favorite passion because of my upbringing and my grandfather and all that, and playing catch with my dad, you name it. I loved it. But there's always that one hitter, that one catch, nobody forgets those moments.
Right.
So all those stand out in my head, Yeah. It's just every time, but I look at baseball. I use baseball as a way to look at life. You can, use it as an analogy. You go to bat every day, sometimes you swing and miss, but guess what? You get to go back up to, to hit. You get another chance. There's always another game. Every good pitcher has a slump.
That's one thing that's great about sports is, one, there's inspirational stories within sports, but sports can be such an analogy to life in the sense of there's life lessons around every corner when it comes to sports. And it's something that brings everybody together so it can be useful. It's, in my situation, it's one of the top ways that P. Diddy and myself bond is over Tennessee sports, and it literally is such a good thing, and it's frustrating to see society and even politics trying to ruin it now, which, can be another discussion for another day, but that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to take away all your joy.
Yeah, so the sports was very important. That helped me out. And the structure helped out. My mom got sick. Everybody knows the story. She smoked cigarettes. It was just downhill. So I had to go through all of that, and that kind of made me act up a little bit. I never got in any true trouble. I wasn't arrested. I wasn't out causing damage. It was just more just doing what I had to do enough in school just so that when it didn't upset my mom, if that makes sense.
Right.
I had siblings there was a valedictorian in my family, Rob. He graduated and got number one in his class, and our classes were 800, 700 kids in one class.
Jeez.
It was a big school, There was at least 2,500 kids that went to my high school. It was a major thing.
I think I graduated with 50 people.
Yeah. Yeah, I graduated.
That's a big class.
Maybe 600 or 700, I looked at the class picture and I just kind of did the math, and I'm like, not everybody's even in the picture, So there was a lot of competition. I grew up, competition was a thing. Being the youngest, and I never went to the same school as any sibling. They were all older than me. So anywhere we went somewhere, it was is Tony tall enough to ride the ride? Is Tony old enough to do this with it? So I always felt like I had to keep up. And that motivated me to where when I got into sports and things like that later, I did well with people that were my age because I was always trying to play with kids that were older than I was.
Right.
So that benefited me greatly. And I got to learn from their mistakes. I will get certain things in life. Smart people learn from their own mistakes, but geniuses learn from their own and then everybody else's.
Yeah.
So that's important.
That is.
But I always try to look at other people's mistakes and learn from that too. Keys to life.
That can save you a lot of heartache down the road.
Yeah, if you don't pay attention, so-and-so, I'll try the same thing. You're wasting your time, man.
And quit standing in line to touch the freaking stove, you idiot.
Yeah. So I went, school there. School was fine. I had those articles I sent you. The one thing that hit me, the first time I ever got, I was in the news a couple times, but there was one time I won this chess tournament with this team. Yeah, there it is. So I'm in the 7th grade. I was a sports nut. All my friends were baseball, soccer, that whole sport people. And this kid asked me to play chess with him. Now that's the internet business we did after that. The top left one is the chess one. So this kid asked me to play chess with him one day in school. I was just started the 7th grade. And I was like, I don't know how to play. Well, he taught me. Carl was his name. He taught me in a few days just how the pieces moved. Well, I got really fascinated with that for some reason. I found it interesting that just these little pieces on so many squares, so all the multiplications there in my head, I got moves memorized all the way to the end. The strategy behind it was so competitive. These people went nuts about chess. You go to a chess club and all my baseball, I was trying to hide it from them. I'd stay after school and go to the chess club, hang out, and then I'd play these guys. And my goal was to beat these guys at chess because I didn't like the fact that the kid beat me,
Right.
So I got real competitive with it. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't like this. So I started studying chess, and then next thing you know, I have my first chess video game, and I'm trying to beat Chess Master, and all this stuff.
And again, let me just point this out. When you're trying to learn how to play chess, which is an incredibly tough game to not learn, but be good at.
Right.
You're not just looking up a YouTube video having some sort of tutorial by a guy that's really good at it. You're having to deep dive. You're probably reading chess books at the library and all kind of stuff.
Well, I didn't have time to be scared of asking. I straight up went to the chess team guy, the coach, and I was like, look, I'm busy with sports and all this, but I want to do this chess thing. I want to learn how to play. And his name was Mr. Wamser. And he died of a heart attack, by the way, when I was in high school. Poor guy. Good guy. He let me come to the chess things after class, and I started mingling with the people just because I was curious and I wanted to learn how to get good. And it just went off from there. It didn't take long. I mean, within 6 months, I went to that first tournament. That's about 5 months after I started
This
playing
you right
chess.
here?
Yes. I was the number one guy on the team the first year I was in it. And at that tournament, I went 4-1. I lost to this one kid. His last name was O-H, and it was from MG School. Okay. I remember his face and everything, but he had me there at the end, and I didn't like that at all. I didn't lose again the next year, not one time.
Yeah, that's the most Tony thing ever.
Nobody beat me at chess in my 8th grade.
Yeah.
When I went to high school, it got different. There was some
real competitive,
right?
Guys.
And that's when you're rated and you get your numbers in. And
did you start to back off at that point?
Well, I backed off once I got to a certain point where it got to be, if I'm going to go any further, because I was rated. I got a trophy for being top unrated player at this tournament one time as a solo, not a team thing. And out of all these people that weren't rated, I got number 1. Well, next thing you know, they want to slap a rating on you. So then they slap a rating on you like 1,000 or 900 or something. You'd have to look it up to see how they rate it, but it's almost like people, for you meet a chess player and you're like, you don't say how long you've been playing, what kind of moves do you like? You say, what's your rating? That's how that language went. So I'd show up at these tournaments, people would say, what's your rating? Well, my rating got high enough. I don't want to say it, but I went to this high school meet and I went to this tournament and I told people, they were like, what's your rating? And I had to report it at that point. It was like 1,300 something, whatever. And I started looking at the charts about how they scaled it all off. And I started seeing all my competition, and I got into that one. It was a high school match over in the west side of St. Louis. These people were so competitive. I didn't want to go home every night and play chess until I went to bed and then start the day over. I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to, learn other things. So that's when I kind of dropped it off. I was like, look, there's no future in it. Who's going to make money? I'm like, this is just not profitable.
So you leave chess.
Yeah.
And then what's next?
There was chess, there was baseball. I was kind of doing lots of stuff at once. Okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, learning about other things. My dad was teaching about cars and things like that. Oh, there's the internet thing. That'll come a little later, but, I'll kind of skip, I guess my first job, I'll tell you about that, but it was at a Hardee's. I was fry boy. I was in the back. My first day on the job, and I'm putting fries in the pan, and you're supposed to salt the fries.
Right.
And that was the first time I ever got yelled at in a job, was I didn't salt the fries. I put the fries up. Manager was watching me. I didn't salt the fries. And then I learned my first day at work what not to do with a brand new hire. Mm-hmm. That was my first experience of learning from somebody else's mistake.
Yeah.
She went at me the wrong way. And then I started to realize why that particular Hardee's had high turnover. But I wasn't going to let that get to me. I decided to be the best damn worker there.
Right.
I immediately was like, okay, you're going to play that game with me? I figured out how to make her job tough. I was putting up stuff so fast to the point months later, I'm like the lead supervisor in the back before I was even 18. And it was a busy Hardee's in this place. And I was trying to mess her up to the point to where, what are you doing? And I was this young kid and I was cocky. But I learned so much at that job. I worked for my dad at his chemical place. I got a lot of production experience, forklift driving before I was 18. I can say that now. I get, just little things, make mistakes. I saw my dad, managing like dozens of people, like 40 people on the schedule, whatever, this plant. Lots of experiences with that. And that was the first time my dad ever yelled me at the job. I called him dad one time in front of someone, and oh man, that was bad.
I just love the straight-laced business
Good
of
Lord.
your dad.
I mean, he flat out just like, he grabbed my shirt and he was like, it's Doc. And I'm like, okay.
You better watch your mouth, boy.
Yeah, and because he didn't want me to be the guy's son.
So you worked for your dad for a little bit, and then what's after that?
Yeah, then Hardee's, and then there was this other chain, Fazoli's, where Italian food, and then there was also Papa John's, where I was a manager for that. I did management all.
So a good bit of food
after
industry.
Hardee's. Once I got out of Hardee's, and then did the Fazoli's Italian thing, that was all management after that.
Right.
I never looked back as far as go and punch in and do what they're told. I was more of a leader, and I think the sports play a lot into that. I just happened to naturally be like,
absolutely.
okay, guys, here's the objective. Here's what we got to do.
Yeah.
I just naturally knew how to do it. And people taught me along the way how to do schedules, how to make budgets, all those things I learned. That other news article up there, that's the other article that was bad. Okay. When I say that, there was negative effects. That chess article, I got a lot of static from my friends when I play baseball.
Why is that? Because you were spending your time and energy on chess?
No, it was different times, man. These guys, you just had to know these guys.
You were a nerd for playing chess? Is that what they were saying?
I remember specifically playing baseball on a practice, and I hit a triple, and I slid into third, and I was safe. And when I got up, the third baseman was just like, man, that was almost checkmate. And I'm just like, God, here we go. You know?
Yeah.
So they'd always give you little jokes and kind of tease you about it, go play off your nerd friends,
But this article in particular is what?
That was negative. It was good. I mean, after I got into management, my mom was really sick. I was getting desperate because he was getting ready to die, and for some reason I went a little psychotic. I thought that I needed to figure out some way to make enough money to save her. Okay,
right.
I don't know.
And you're what age this time?
21.
Okay.
21. I'm 21 in that picture right there. So I just got this wild thing, and I put it all out on the table. I'm like, I was managing the pizza place, the Papa John's, and there was this kid in town that started this he didn't start the internet company. He had an idea for an internet company, and I got pitched the idea, and I did some thinking about it. I'm like, I think we might have something here. And then it spiraled into chaos. I'm talking like overnight, within a matter of a couple months, I'm going from being a manager of a pizza place to quitting my job, to putting a suit on, to going coast to coast, going to investor meetings, going up in tall buildings in St. Louis into law firms, and then having people want to get my time.
And what's this product that you're pitching?
It was we owned about 550 domain names. They were all attractive URLs. And it was before, how there's like .com, .net, .gov. Well, this was before it was like .tv, .us, .other.
That's what you guys had owned?
We got a bunch of the .at and a bunch of the .to, but mainly the .at, which is for, I believe, Austria. That's their
that's their .com.
Right. But we were spelling out like a phrase for people to use it for like an advertising, almost like a cars.com/eBay, like an advertisement, classified things. Instead of back in the old days when people would look at the classifieds in the newspaper and then you'd call about a car and then you'd have to go look at it and things like that. We were making it to people for free. You could just put their stuff up and get their info and then get an attractive URL. Like we owned a bunch of like details.at. There was mycarforsale.at. And then you would spell it out, and it came out to be this really like attractive idea. A lot of people were sold on it.
So you were selling the site. You were selling the URL. How did you acquire the URLs in the first place?
We acquired the URLs because, so looking at that picture, the guy in the middle, his name is Jason. I'll just say that much. So he is the one that initially came up with the idea. The guy on the left is still a friend of mine. His name is Tony as well. He's the handyman, in fact, the maintenance guy for the shop. Whenever he comes into town, he still lives in the St. Louis area.
And that's you on the right?
Correct.
That looks nothing like you, man.
Yeah, well, I was 21 and I was pretty for a picture. I don't like pictures. I don't take pictures. I don't like. What happened was, a story got out about us, and we're on the news one day on a local ABC affiliation in the morning, and they came out to the place, and I'm live on TV, and they're like interviewing me. And then this other newspaper called me up wanting to do an interview with us, and they couldn't find a picture of me anywhere, and they wanted to take all of our picture. So we agreed to it. We're like, okay. Well, we go, and it turns out to be this interview thing, and then they totally write it out. Like, this was my first time in my life I was ever actually part of some fake news, okay? Like, I experienced firsthand my life was, you got to understand, folks, this is where I grew up, okay? Right. All my friends.
Hometown paper.
Everybody, hey, everybody. So I didn't necessarily want people knowing to this extent, but it wasn't that fact. It was okay, yeah, I'm doing this, but it was the fact that they made the story so much more extravagant than it was supposed to be, and it was just for, they put it on the front page of the business section.
So in this article, they were basically explaining your business that you guys have come up with, but
right.
You feel like that they didn't accurately portray it, but they portrayed it bigger than it was, and then that rubbed you the wrong way?
So much so, to the fact that, we had an offer on the table for all the names and then the idea for $3 million, okay? That's a fact, okay?
Okay.
We didn't take it. We should have. But either way you slice it, we had that offer, and then when she made the article out, she knew about that offer, which we told her in detail, and then she quoted us as saying $300 million. So then, yes,
back then,
it says $300 million in that article. Okay, so
wow,
I don't even. That's just the start of it. There's other things that kind of twisted it, and it made it seem so much bigger than it was supposed to be. See, the idea was they had the website, but it wasn't fully functional. It wasn't ready to operate. So we tried to get it operating, and then we decided to sell it to somebody who would operate it and then own all the domains, and that was the goal. So I ended up being the seller. And that ties into some other things.
So you were just to kind of wrap this one up.
I was like the Elon Musk of that internet site. I was trying to take something like Elon Musk didn't invent Tesla.
Right.
He came along and saw an opportunity, and then he tried to make it big.
Okay.
That's what I tried to do with that. And it was a desperation move on the account of my mother, because honestly, if she wasn't sick and dying and I didn't see her in a bed every day, I probably wouldn't have had the motivation to try that.
Right.
But I'm glad I did it all, because I learned so much. You can't even make this stuff up.
Well, I just see the picture and how young you guys are, and even 3 million being in a position that early on where, like, now it's so easy to just grab ideas from all over the place because everything's so accessible, and you've got so many people, say, online copying other people and just stealing their ideas. To be able to come up with that, which you obviously had to do on your own, and you didn't steal that idea from somebody else. It's pretty astonishing.
Well, see, the $3 million, I wouldn't have gotten $3 million. Even after taxes, it's so much, and then everybody had to split it up, and then there was people that had investment in it. In fact, I got to tell you, during that whole episode, I met this rich guy I started hanging out with. His name was Lou Mund out of Columbia, Illinois. The guy was worth well over $50 million, full compound, full everything, gate, sensors. If you arrive to his house, he knows about it well ahead of time, because he'll probably know your body temperature. And this is back in the late 90s, he was set up, and he owned the golf course, and he was all the land off the Mississippi River there by St. Louis. He leased out to these barge companies, so he's getting them these monthly payments.
Right.
So he sets up, as I found out later, as somewhat of a prank. He got such a kick out of this. He liked me a lot. He took me around on his motorcycle and showed me all of his businesses. And he set up this pitch meeting for me where he brought in, there was, 16 FBI agents to pitch this business. And before we were riding up to these FBI agents at his farm thing that he owned, he said, well, you're the president of the company, and just know that there's that for anything ever illegal happens, that you're the one that's going to go down. He said that to me like a minute before we walked in.
Oh, geez.
And I found out that they were all FBI agents.
Wow. Now, What was it? I'm trying to understand.
He hung out with FBI agents all the time.
Would he wanted you to pitch it to them just to see if the FBI agents would tell him, hey, it's good or it's not?
Because of that news article right there. That's what set off a firestorm around the area. Like, I had old friends of mine come. Like, they were interested in investing and getting in early, so they got a hold of Lou, because Lou knew me and Jason. It was Jason's uncle type person. So anyway, talking on the microphone. So
all right, John Bird.
Yeah. So I show up, and right before we're in Lou's Jeep, and he said, just so you know, these guys are all FBI or retired. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. So just look sharp. I'm like, okay. So I go in there, and they're all looking sharp, and I'm dressed down from what they look like. And I'm like, okay, here goes. And he had just said that to me, and I'm like looking around the room.
There's a lot of pressure.
And then I found out a few months later that somebody had actually called a previous teacher of mine and asked about me and what kind of a student I was and all this other stuff.
That's very FBI type stuff right
but
there.
It wasn't in a negative. It wasn't like they were trying to dig up for dirt. It was just like they were trying to research me.
Wanted to see what they were getting
yeah,
into.
and I think the other guys might have had the same type of thing. I don't know.
Probably.
But yeah, so there was that. Went out to San Francisco with that crew. Silicon Valley. I got to meet these rich people in Silicon Valley. Oh man, money like you wouldn't believe. We went to this one business meeting where there was so much money sitting in that room to where when people went up to make their pitches, it was actual leaders of like cities. Like the mayor of Cleveland was there, and there was some other mayor there from a different state, different city, and they were all trying to get money for their area. Okay, we're talking like millions and millions of dollars. And there was the .com people. Yahoo was there. And it was like this super event, and I'll never forget it. Just all the limousines and just the looks. I mean, these people, unbelievable, man. So I was mingling with people like that for a little bit.
So where does that situation come to an end?
That came to an end. Well, basically, this straights into another thing. This gets a little traumatic. That news article spiraled a lot of things for me. It made me some friends got a little weird. There was resentment. There was some people that were jealous, when I didn't really want. I was just trying to get enough money.
Well, when there was $300 million number floating out there, people start treating you different.
Yeah, and I told them, no, that's false. And even if it's $3 million after taxes, it's only so much, and then I only get a certain percentage, and even after that, there's,
And then they feel like you're BSing them, and it just gets all awkward.
Right, right. I didn't even really fully understand. I was young, but I learned so much from that.
It's almost like somebody that is middle, lower class. They hit the lottery, hit the Mega Millions or Powerball, and then all of a sudden they're like, even though you didn't even have the money or you haven't won the money via lottery ticket, you were getting that treatment, and they were thinking, they were no longer genuine. It was about, oh, this guy's got a lot of money.
Well, it also spiraled into something bad too. My grandmother's friend, his name's Skip. It's not his real name. I won't say it on the air, but make a long story short, he caught wind of this internet thing, and I had a meeting in Atlanta. I was meeting with the head of strategic relations of WebMD. Okay, his name was Mike Heekin. This would have been 2000. Okay, and so I go to meet Mike Heekin, and this guy Skip, who had known my grandmother for 40 years, somehow gets a hold of me, and he lives in the Atlanta area. And before that, I'd helped him. He was a gay man. He had AIDS or something, and he had a life insurance policy, and I forwarded him to someone that would help him get money now for his life insurance policy that hadn't whatever yet, because basically he said he was going to die, okay? So I helped him get that at one point, and he got his money, and I saw it go through. Well, when I was in Atlanta, he invited me to his so-called house, and I show up, and he tells me the story about how he's going to inherit all these millions of dollars, and that his mom's father was part of the steel industry giant, the Niedringhaus family. They're like Granite City Steel, U.S. Steel. In Granite City near St. Louis, that was a big steel hub.
Right.
Lots of money, lots of names, that you can drop around there and try to be someone. So this guy, it turned out to be a big scam in the long run, but he even got fake documents and stuff, and there was a gag order on the release of the money, and he was owed all this money, and he was going to give my grandma half, and...
So, but how did he drag you into that?
I went to his place, and he told me his problem, and I was so desperate to try to help my mother that he was running out of his own personal money while he was waiting on the money he was supposed to get.
Right.
Okay? And I wasn't even that naive. I was like, okay.
Well, you're somewhat blinded by your mother's situation, and if
I was desperate to figure out something, and I wasn't afraid to go bankrupt.
And he, who you have to assume that he's about to give your mom a lot of money that's going to really benefit her. You're like, okay, well, let me help this guy out so he can get to where he's giving my mother money.
Yeah, and it was going to my grandma, not my mom.
Or your grandmother.
Right,
yes,
my grandma
right.
was going to get half, and we started doing figures and everything that we check out names and sure that matches up. And I did my little due diligence, and he brainwashed me, and he used God to do it. And I'm a religious guy, but he'd say, just trust in God, it'll happen. I need another $2,500. Trust in God, it'll happen. I
There's
need
nothing
another
worse than
$3,000.
somebody using that
So
to swindle.
I'm trying to save my mom. I put up 20, 30K into this internet thing to get these domains. I put up another 50K to skip.
Yeah.
40, I guess. My aunt put up a lot too, like thousands of dollars. And we basically treated him to a nice lifestyle and moving to Palm Springs, where he could mingle with his friends there. And then the truth finally came out because he moved in with my aunt. It's such a long, drawn out story, but he made me lose a lot of trust in people.
What ultimately happened to him?
We let him go because what are you going to sue him for?
Yeah.
I thought about maybe throwing him in the jail, but I don't want to throw anybody in jail. I just, my mom was dying. I didn't know what else to do. I thought.
So did he just went out on his own and off into the sunset? Is he still alive?
He could be. He might be. I just choose to just lesson learned.
Right.
I've made mistakes before. I've had a friend use my name for his power bill because I felt bad his power got cut off. And yeah, he was paying his bill. And then I get a notice in my mail that your power never got paid for at all, even though I'd asked.
Now that's on your credit.
Stuff like that,
Yeah.
which I won't bring up. But a lot of things you learn as you go.
Right.
Because I had so much trust. I generally trust everybody until they lose it.
Right.
But now I watch what I do. So the internet thing happened, learned a lot, mingled with a lot of important players. And then that didn't pan out. The skip thing didn't pan out. So I'm left there. My mother was literally like months away from dying. I had lost all hope. I'm like, okay.
You're probably low on money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it got to the point to where I'm like, I either need to go back to work or I need to settle this thing with the internet and at least, get out of it. So I got some money out of that to just get out. And then I went back to work. And then once I went back to work, I went back to Fazoli's. That was my favorite place to work before the internet thing happened.
Right.
So I went back there and, tried to make it. And then, of course, there's people in town. It's like, oh, big internet guy, what can I get for you, kind of thing. And you get a little bit of that, but it only just built me stronger, So I just decided I'm just going to go back into it. I focused on work again. I focused on management. I had to file for bankruptcy because I lost everything I had. And that was totally on me. I was willing to do it. I've already read up on bankruptcy laws, and I don't want to say it was planned, but my plan was to make millions of dollars so that way I could get mom like great treatment. I thought like money could save it, but even that wouldn't have done anything.
And you got so close to it, but there was
even
a couple.
Even the $3 million before all that at the very beginning wouldn't have been nearly enough. I mean, I was wanting to, I was going for everything.
Right.
So
that
I only own like a few percentage of that thing. I would only had, you can't.
Right. Well, you hit a wall and you're like, okay, I don't have a choice but to cash out and go back to work. You work in the restaurant industry until when?
Yeah, I did that until I was 27.
Okay.
And then I moved to Florida. I needed the whole change of scenery. My mom had just died. I'd been depressed.
She died. How old were you when she died?
25.
25.
Yeah,
so
she died July of 2002.
A couple years after that, you moved to Florida.
About 3 years. Yeah. 2.5 years.
Okay.
3. Yeah. So it was just because of a change of scenery. I was driving around town. I felt like a failure because, I had to come to the realization that there was nothing I could do. And that was so hard to do at the beginning because I felt like I had so much control in my life.
Well, everything you had done up to that point was to save your mom. And that didn't happen, and you blamed yourself in a sense.
Yeah, but not directly, just kind of like, now that I look back, I was just dumb, and I just did, it was almost like I was trying to go make all that money when I should have been there for her more. And I was there for her more after I got out of the internet thing. The last months of her life, I was there like every minute I could be.
Right.
But
your intentions were pure the entire time,
right.
though.
And I never admitted it at the time. You know, she'd be like, "Why are you trying?" Oh, Mom, it's just this great idea. You know, it's gonna work. It's gonna work.
And so she was skeptical about everything. What was her response to that stuff?
I mean, she ain't gonna stop me.
Right.
You know, I was already 18, so once I was 18, that's it. You know, either pay rent or get out. You know, so
you get down to Florida.
Yep. New career, new scenery, new everything.
You start in the car wash business.
Yes, I changed from food. I left food only because I liked food. However, I thought that only having one or two things good at later on in life would not be helpful.
So you decided to boost the resume.
I was real into cars. I liked washing my own car from time to time, and I'm like, I think this is something I would enjoy to do. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that. Got into the management thing right away. In fact, never washed a car in my life like professionally, and started off as a manager with all these new people. And this was like busy car washes. We're talking like, 30 employees, 40 employees at one time on a weekend with a big lot and cars just coming in and out, the full service type thing.
But and you're the person that, if you're faced with something you don't know how to do, you go all in, and you don't stop going all in until you know how to do it and do it well. And so you excelled very quickly in that.
As much as possible. Yeah, I had to learn fast, and it was mainly mechanics. My boss at the time, when I first started, Don, he even said to me, "Look, I'm not going to teach you how to manage. You know how to do that, but I will teach you how the car wash business is." And he did. Mm-hmm. I learned all about it, the equipment, the hydraulics behind it, so many things, the air pumps, the RO systems for the water.
So you quickly move into
plumbing.
that.
Yeah, I do all that. And then I go to technically that was my last job, like physical job. I did that for 7.5 years before I did the vape store with the wife.
How many years in Florida?
Florida was
you're in Tampa area.
Yeah, 2005, and I moved to Birmingham April Fool's Day of 2008.
April Fool's Day.
Yes.
So while you were in Florida, we'll do Florida for a minute, and then we'll come to Birmingham. You were, since we're talking about sports, you employed a person that a lot of people in our radio listening audience would recognize as a former Alabama great, Javier Arenas.
Yes, that's right. Of course, didn't know it at the time. Javier Arenas was a vacuumer for Grand Prix Car Wash off of Gandy Boulevard in Tampa, Florida.
He's in high school at the time.
He's in high school, Plant High School. They won the championship 2 years in a row.
Big-time high school football player.
I don't even know if I wrote him up one time for being late on a Saturday. So, of course, I didn't even know who, they were like...
he's just a high school kid.
Yeah, and the guys at the job were talking. They were like... man, he's a really good football player. And I'm like, I don't care. He doesn't know how to vacuum,
So what was it? So he was late to work one day. What did he say when he got there?
No, he said it was football. And then his friends even confirmed it was football, but it was like 2.5 hours.
And you were like,
I was like, no, we got to document this, because that was like structured rules,
So Javier Arenas, who literally becomes, he goes on to be a great NFL player. He's late because of football practice, where he's playing for a championship team.
Yes.
He's 2.5 hours late, which is not really acceptable in any situation, let's be honest. Says it's football while he's late, and Tony's like, I don't care about you up.
Yeah, I think he was supposed to be 8:30, and he didn't show up until around 11. Yes.
I mean, that's pretty bad, but, you think he'd call in or something.
He was just... we had lots of kids on the weekends, and it was all adults during the week.
And all the kids look the same to you as far as, like, they're all employees.
Either you're a good vacuumer or you're a good wiper or you know how to do this. But
I don't care about your stupid NFL career. Get in here.
Well,
get in here on time.
I didn't know, but years later, this just happened, while I lived here. But I'm at a place, and I meet a couple guys that were ex-Alabama players, and we were talking, and they were like, oh, you own Vaper Forge? I'm like, yeah, my wife, and And I said, funny enough, Javier Arenas worked for me. And they were like, nuh-uh. And I told them the story. And then they kind of went off and were talking amongst each other. And they come back, and he's like, hey, I got somebody here to talk to. And he pulls his phone around. He's got Javier Arenas on a video call looking right at me. I'm like, oh my God.
That's so funny.
He was like, what's up, Albers? Or yeah, anyway. And
thanks for writing me up, buddy.
Yeah. Well, we didn't even think about that. I was just thinking of the paper trail.
Right.
Because I didn't realize the connection. Somebody pointed it out to me. Yeah. I didn't come to Alabama and be like, oh, Javier Arenas plays for Alabama.
Right.
I had no idea. Yeah. I didn't even remember his last name. It was another manager that called me.
Yeah.
And he was like, can you believe Javier got that contract? I'm like, what contract?
Who's Javier?
Who's Javier? And he goes, Javier Arenas. And I go, from Alabama? The kickoff return guy?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, that was the vacuum. I would go, nuh-uh. He said, yeah, that was him. And I'm like, whoa. And then it clicked. He was the football player, the running back from Plant High School.
How about that?
That they talked about.
Well, and there was another situation with that particular car wash where you used to see some pretty famous people come through that car wash.
Okay, yeah, the Florida car wash scene was like sick. I wish I was a picture guy. I remember them all in my head, but I should have taken pictures. But baseball players, hockey players, all the local news people, movie stars. Good Lord, Kirstie Alley. I've talked to her. I don't even know where to begin, man.
Well, let's just narrow it down to one.
Okay,
Hulk Hogan. You were mentioning that at the beginning of the show.
Okay, that's a good one. Because there's a lot of stories. So I knew him and his son, Bolia, their last name. They had a beach house right down the street. So his son Nick got in a bad car accident one time, and the day before that happened was a Saturday, and we're out washing cars. He pulls up with a bunch of his friends, and they had 3 separate cars. And I drove his car, which was a yellow Supra. It was a stick shift. It was a sports car, so you had to be really careful with the clutch and everything, or else, it's a transmission. So I drove it onto the pad, had the guys wash his car, and then I drove it back out to the front of him. Oh, man, I'm seeing that you got that car.
Yeah.
That's his car. That's him.
So this just for those of you watching the video, this is the car that Tony's talking about.
Yeah,
and
I drove that the day before that wreck, and then I saw Hulk Hogan on the road after the wreck when I heard about it because I went down the street to go look. So I drove that car, and that thing he had like 6 speeding tickets before that, and I remember telling that kid, I said, "Man, you got to be careful out there." But as a person, super nice kid. I mean, he wasn't like all full of himself and this and that. And that other guy, John Graziano, that got hurt, that picture of that guy right there, I met him too. He had a truck, a Toyota Tundra, or it was gray.
So just to explain the story that people don't know, basically what happens is Hulk Hogan's son, Nick, he's got this car, and it was all over the news. It was headlines everywhere. He gets in a wreck because he's out there speeding or driving goofy or whatever.
Yep.
He's got his friend with him, who I believe is a Marine at the time.
Yes.
And that friend getting in that car wreck with him, it paralyzes him for the rest of his life.
Yeah, he's not doing too well.
And Nick Hogan gets injured as well. And so the reason it became a headline, not only because Nick Hogan, I think maybe they even had their TV show at that time, Hogan Knows Best.
No, that was
right after.
That was. Actually, they did. Yeah,
I think it was
going on before. No, it was going on before that because that kind of ruined the show, sort of.
Okay, so it was around that time.
Yeah, and there's so much I learned about reality TV from him.
Yeah,
but anyway.
So like this happens and it becomes a big deal, and like the family and all that's wanting to sue the Hogan family for obvious reasons, not just. Obviously because their son got hurt, but there's also a lot of money involved on that front.
And everybody was talking about it around that area because everybody knew. He would go into Target and talk to everybody. Hulk Hogan was not, he was a public guy. He reminded me of Charles. He reminded me of Charles Barkley because I know I've met him too, and in multiple occasions, and he likes talking to lots of people.
You briefly beat Charles Barkley in pool one time, right?
Yeah, I know. I don't want to rub that in, but yes.
You ran the table on him.
That was one time at the place right down the street from the shop. Courtyard.
Yeah. Courtyard 280.
I played him, and that was another thing I did. Yeah, I played pool, bowling leagues there, darts. I was constantly busy. I never found myself at home watching TV on the couch eating chips.
Well, to package all of that up, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, you were you did all of those things and you excelled like crazy. For instance, I've bowled and I've played pool with you, and both of which the first time we did it, you hadn't done it in a long time. One of the cases even years since you've done it, and you started off and you looked kind of average, and then after one game, you look like a professional bowler. You look like a professional pool player. So I know, like, you're telling the truth about all these things you were great. You got trophies on your wall and plaques and all this stuff from pool tournaments you won. So the competitive nature that you learned from a young age all bled into that. It bled into your work, your job. It was always... and you do it with me too. You say, hey, do things this way, or this, that, and the other, in a constructive way, obviously.
Yeah.
But you've always been the type of person that is, do the best you can do, and always look at all angles. Make sure you're taking the best path as well. So.
Even as far as thinking outside the box, sometimes the best thing to do is nothing.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's very true.
So,
we have you. It's a star-studded time at the car wash in
yeah,
Tampa.
Lots of people. By the way, the biggest nose I ever saw in my life was Ryan Howard, first baseman for the Phillies.
The biggest nose?
Yes, dude. Willie McGee, this Cardinals player, he looked like an alien in person. Like me and you sitting there, like I was like a kid, like, oh my God.
You're like, hey, I saw you in my backyard as a kid.
When he was up to bat, he looked like he was in pain. He just his face, Willie McGee. You can look it up. And then also, what was the one right before that I mentioned? The other player.
I can't remember.
I don't know. Anyway.
But you meet a lot of people. Then you moved to Birmingham. What year?
2008, April Fool's Day is when I moved
That's right.
here. Yeah, and I started off on that car wash at 280 for a long time.
What's the status? Yeah, you were working at the Mr. Car Wash.
Yeah, it was car wash headquarters. I believe called here was the name of the car wash.
Where are you at? Okay, so
but Mr. Car Wash was my parent company that bought out all of the car washes, and then they all became. There was like 100 something car washes, 170 something stupid.
Where are you at in life as far as when did you meet Amy?
I met Amy in 2011.
Okay,
this would have been late January.
So I'm
glad I know all this.
You meet her because she's from Childersburg. You meet her after you get here. How do y'all meet?
See, that was really weird. We met when I went to go play pool one night. I wasn't supposed to be here all that long. I came here. The car wash moved me. Okay, I was in Florida. Mr. Car Wash came and bought off the Grand Prix car washes, and then car wash headquarters, which we had some locations in Texas, and then the locations here in Birmingham. There's also one in Vestavia. There was. Then Mr. Car Wash came in, bought everything, had a meeting with me, wanted me to move to Alabama and help them transition the 2 stores here, and then furthermore wanting to add more stores with it.
Yeah.
So I was part of that plan, but I wasn't supposed to be here forever. It was just supposed to be a temporary thing.
So the car wash industry brought you here.
They asked me to come here. I did not ask to come here.
Right.
But
why would you want to leave Tampa to go to 280?
Before I came to Alabama, I'd never been to Alabama.
Right.
I was raised in St. Louis and then Cleveland, and I heard lots of Alabama jokes. As my whole life's gone on, anytime something happens, like my brother marries a Polish woman, and then I can't tell any Polish jokes anymore.
Yeah, just
as soon as I moved to Alabama, I can't tell Alabama jokes.
Yeah, just ruins it.
But yeah, so they moved me here, and at first I was a little standoffish because, you get a bad reputation in certain parts of the country, and I was brainwashed into believing certain things. But once I moved here, as time went on, the more and more I appreciated it. And it was my wife, Amy, is the main reason why I even stayed here, because I met her and I just didn't want to leave her. I'm like, I just can't, because I was going to move to Utah, Salt Lake City. They had a bunch of car washes in Salt Lake, and I was just going to get a fresh start. It was right before I'd met Amy. I was even talking to it about my boss, and then I met Amy, and then she's wanting to meet my boss, and I'm like, don't say anything to her. I didn't know what to do. And then one day I had to break down and tell my bosses that I didn't want to go anywhere. And then that kind of screwed up their thing.
Yeah, because you're very career-oriented, so you didn't want to throw a wrench. You're just trying to do whatever you got to do to make not only yourself be successful, but make the company successful.
Well, yeah, I was a company guy, and I had a couple years left before. See, I still had that bankruptcy looming over me for a while. So the car wash
Which I know
industry,
drove you nuts.
I was willing to take the risk. I knew what was going to happen, but I didn't plan on it. I never
Right.
went to do all that stuff and spend all that money if I didn't really truly I had so much trust in people, and it is what it is. And when we went to go get money for certain things after my mom had passed, the .com bubble, it was like the worst timing ever because everybody was all into the internet and wants
Yeah.
and I'm all into stocks, all that. It all tanked.
You basically, if you lost money because you waited too long to sell it.
Correct. Yeah, it wasn't the right time. And that's when I learned so much about the time in the market and the timing of the market.
So again, another lesson learned along the way.
Yep.
Meet Amy in 2011.
Yep.
You guys get married when?
We got married in May of 2012.
Moving fast.
About a year and a half. It was January of 2011. So I had a full year. And we went hard. I had to go fast because I was supposed to move. So when I first met her,
you're like, hey, if we're going to do this, we got to get married.
Like the first night we met, and then she left, and then I left. I'm like, wait a minute. I got to call her.
I really like this girl.
Well, I was like, I couldn't let it go, and it was just, and then I stayed a little longer, and I wasn't supposed to move right away. I had a few months.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't going to I even told her at the beginning, I'm like, look, I'm getting ready to move.
So you guys get married. What does life look like career-wise and even financially now that you're staying in Birmingham in the car wash industry?
Well, it was good. I was making really good money. I was, more than you would believe, in a car wash. It's actually quite lucrative if you have lots of volume. But I was doing just fine. Paycheck's fine. I was saving up, whatever. And I lived right behind the car wash, so I walked to work. Just so that way I didn't have to use my car or gas.
Right.
I was so cheap. I didn't like to waste any money. I wouldn't have a problem spending money on something as long as I got something for it.
Yeah, you need some ROI.
Yeah. So exactly. So and one thing I forgot to mention was I did go to college for about a year when I was 18, right out of high school.
That's the only college you had?
At that time.
Okay.
Yeah, before I had met Amy. And I went for a year, and my mom was getting so sick. I was doing that plus everything else that I was trying to accomplish. So I was just a busy guy.
Right.
And I was missing out on all the fun.
Right.
So I don't know where I was going with
no,
that.
we're just sticking with the timeline where
Yeah.
Okay, so
meet Amy.
You and Amy get married.
Right.
You're still in the car wash industry. You're making decent money.
Right.
And then where does that lead you? Do you plan on staying in the car wash industry for a long time? Is that just your career?
That was actually my plan. I was like, I knew so much that at that point about business itself, but I felt more comfortable running somebody else's machine. That way, if there was ever a big mess up or if anybody goes bankrupt, it ain't me.
You're off the hook.
Yeah.
And where does that vision of just staying in the car wash industry, where does that come to a halt?
It came to a halt when the wife and I went to Florida on a vacation trip, and we walked into a vape store for the first time, not knowing what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we discovered vaping. And
didn't know anything about it.
No, I'd seen a couple of things on TV, and I'd tried this product called Blue, where it was just, you buy it at gas stations or Walgreens.
Yeah, it was like a little cigarette.
Yeah, it was black. You just puff on it. And I'm like, this thing sucks. There was no flavor.
Those were awful.
Yeah.
Absolutely
and I'm like,
awful.
how am I supposed to quit smoking when, and that's another thing I've never even mentioned. My mom smoked the whole time. I smoked 16 years,
You started smoking at age what?
I tried a cigarette for the first time when I was in the 7th grade, but I really didn't start smoking until after I stopped playing baseball, which was like 19.
Okay.
So, yeah, once I was off the baseball trip and I realized there was no money, I'm like, I was good at baseball, but if I really put the effort in needed, just like I thought of with chess, just like I thought with bowling. Yeah, I've thrown a 279 and I've been good. But if you want to get really good at something, you got to dedicate. And I just didn't want to dedicate.
So you've been smoking for several years.
Yeah, and Amy had too.
Amy was as well.
Right.
You guys make a trip down to Florida.
Yeah.
And you start asking the question, can there not be something more appealing or something better, a better alternative to smoking that involves vaping?
We were open-minded. We just happened to walk in there. It was because of my aunt. My aunt was like, "What's that place?" So we walked.
You were just passing by.
It was right next to the old car wash that I used to run in Florida. I was there on a vacation with my wife, and I was still in the car wash business, seeing old employees of mine.
Okay. And your aunt's just like, "Hey, let's go in there real quick.
Like,
that looks like a cool store."
Yeah, I don't want to say the name of it because it's a long story, but we walked in there. I was like, "What's this?" And I was like, I hit this one. It was called Red Mojito. It was like a strawberry, like mint.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, oh my gosh. So I got tobacco flavor. I got the mojito. She gets her kid. I get mine. We go back home and or to the hotel, I guess, and then we go to my aunt's. And we're like, this is good, This is April of 2013 when we discovered it. And then by May of 2013, I'd formed an LLC with the wife. We're going
that quick.
A month. Yeah, we're meeting up with the guy. We're looking for locations. There was no vape shops anywhere except for Vulcan Vape.
The guy that owned the store that you guys spotted and went into, that's who you're talking to.
Yeah. And we were talking to him because I really liked his concept, and I liked just the fact that she stopped smoking cigarettes. Her Aunt Martha smoked for like 40-some years, and she was 2-3 packs a day. We tested it out with her. She quit completely right away.
Wow.
Like, first day, she vaped, no more cigarettes, and then her life just got better.
That it was just how it happened.
We did our research, found out how much better it was for you, and then started promoting it. Yeah.
So you get with this guy that owns the store that you went to,
right?
And you've formed an LLC, and you're like, "Hey, I want to get in this business."
Yeah, that's the gist of how that happened, and it was mainly to get off people of cigarettes, and then to make sure that this business could stay afloat for a long time. And then we also had the whole political thing. Like, vaping's never really been popular, and it's we'll have to have a vaping episode one time, but
it's got stereotypes attached to it.
Yeah, which are not true at all.
None of them. And actually, none of them.
Yeah, so I saw the fake news happening with the whole tobacco and vaping thing, and I'd been a part of fake news where they exaggerate things, and I saw the exaggerations, and I'm like, okay.
So you knew going into it that it was going to be an uphill battle, but you still saw enough potential.
Not right away. That was after we got started.
Okay.
And then we realized it was going to be a battle. We were about 1.5 years, 2 years in, and then it was like, oh, crap. What's happening now? Oh, no.
One thing after another.
Whose battery blew up in what pocket and what state at what time,
right? And
what did that guy do to it to make it happen,
right? Still deal with that,
right? And it never stops. But it was that's where we got to where we are today.
So that goes that venture.
Yeah,
lasts.
It's still lasting. I mean, we're still
in the initial investment. And you guys take basically everything you've got, and put it into this new venture, and that leaves you guys broke.
Oh, dude! Like there was some months I didn't know. We didn't know how we were going to pay the rent.
Yeah,
like because our rent was high. We were right there on 2. That's high square footage price.
Yes, it is.
So we were like, well, if we're going to do it, we want a good location. But part of it was my fault. I mean, other people too, but they'd come in, like there'd be a woman that would be like the same age as my mother, and be like, I need to quit smoking. I've been smoking 20 years. And I'd be like, well, a kit that's $39.99 in the juice, and after that it'll be like 60 something. She's like, I just don't know if I want to spend that. Cartons of cigarettes are cheaper, and I'm like, what do you want to spend? I mean, I just do anything I could,
right?
And that was the whole approach. Mm-hmm. And it ended up creating a monster in the long run. Well, that's just one thing. There's lots of things.
But even though you guys, some
tougher.
Months y'all didn't know how you were going to pay rent, you were still just passionate because you had seen your Aunt Martha, and you and Amy both had how much that has benefited y'all. And for you, it was more important to get these people to at least get them started. If they're coming in there for the first time, you're like, hey, I would prefer to just give you this if you'll just give it a shot.
Yeah, and I figured I didn't even care if they came back to our place. I just wanted these people because I was a smoker so long. I tried the pill. I've had the patch on. I've had the patch on and smoked at the same time.
Would Amy slap you upside the head when you'd give like massive discounts to a first time customer?
No. I mean, she never gave me any. It was just kind of like, how are we gonna make it next month?
Right.
And meanwhile, it's like
you're scraping change out of the couch.
And we didn't get into this business. We were probably one of the poorest people to start. Like, we thought big right away. We were like, we need a busy place, this and that, and it worked out. When
most people would have been terrified to do that.
Oh yeah, our rent was probably 5-6 times what the normal average Joe. Like, I need a low rent to start because I want to make sure it lasts. We were like, let's just see what happens. We want to get. There's lots of people. I mean, you got to remember, this is like 10 years ago, and there wasn't any vape shops in the area, and we were right there on Highway 280. I knew the whole highway like by the back of my hand. Worked there for a long time, drove up and down that strip, lived on 280.
Knew the traffic.
Knew the demographics. I was like, there's a lot of cigarette butts on every sidewalk. Right. And I saw them every day. And as time's gone on in that area, there's less cigarettes all the time.
So you start this under the umbrella of the person you initially met in Florida.
Yeah, they had nothing to do with the money. It was a franchise. Well, it wasn't technically a franchise yet because he didn't have enough locations, but I liked this concept. My wife liked this concept. We went off of that concept, and basically something happened that we didn't like, that we could prove that he did wrong, and we got out of our deal and started our own thing. That's about how far as I can go without getting into specifics, because there was an actual thing.
Well, yeah. So you guys poured all your money into this, and then you realized that the place you franchised is not doing business the way you guys are willing to do business. Yeah. And so y'all, how hard was it to break away from that and start was it like starting all over?
Well, it was like starting all over, but we were with the other model with that franchise, you could only sell what they had. So the real deal was to try to get as many locations as you wanted. And once we finally found out what was really going on with that place, we had just signed a lease for our second location. Okay.
Oh,
for
wow.
3 years. Yeah. Or no, I'm sorry. That was for 2 years. Just to get in the door. So we had our second one started, hadn't even put up the sign yet, and then had to back out of that company in the first one.
That cost you money to back out of that lease?
Well, yes and no, because you got to understand, we just basically designed a full store and then a second store to fit the narrative of what this person wanted. We had to go by his...
Yeah, because you had to play by his rules.
Even the color of the wall, like the brown and the gray and stuff, like his colors, and then the cream, and the flooring even had to be approved by him. So it was a true franchise type thing.
So you break away from that. You guys start your own thing. You're getting your juice and your product from the last guy. Now you're starting your own thing. You don't have anywhere to get any stuff from.
Now's when things start to click, because then we still had the second store we were doing on, but it wasn't making any money or losing any money.
That was my bad. I cut you off.
It wasn't making or losing. It was just kind of there, and more of we lost focus, because now that we're doing our own thing, how are we going to try to make 2 stores happen
when you don't even know how the first one's going to work?
When the first one's just, it's not like it was losing. It just wasn't making. So we basically went like 3 years without getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
I didn't really make, she had a job still. And even along the way, I delivered some pizzas on the side because we always wanted to pay our people.
Most people don't understand how that's even feasible. You just to go 3 years without a paycheck.
Well, yeah. But we have our priorities. First, you got your rent. I mean, immediately rent. Then you got your people, pay your people. Then you worry about product, and then you worry about yourself after everything else. I mean, we just didn't make any money for a long time. But you know what? Our value was we were getting a lot of people off cigarettes.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people. And
so for 3 years, it goes down that road, and then you start picking up some steam. When did Vaper Forge open its doors? And for instance, when did the name change?
This would have been Vaper Forge itself. This would have been early the 2004 spring of 2014.
Okay,
so once we found out what the guy was up to, I can't even say what it is. We knew we had to get out, so we ripped the Band-Aid right off.
Right,
and did what we had to do. You know, we couldn't sit around when your rent's that high every month. You can't just sit around and be like,
What
let's
are we
talk.
gonna do?
Let's
Yeah,
meet
yeah.
up next weekend and figure out. I mean, it was like,
So y'all cut it off immediately,
Yep.
and then started this journey of 3 years no paycheck, and
Yeah.
that's 2014. So you go 15, 16,
yeah.
and it wasn't probably till 2017 that you guys started to pick up some steam.
Yeah, it was a slow climb. It was a customer, because we didn't have the kind of money other vape shops had. We couldn't go out and get everything and have it in stock like today.
You were just trying to find out what was a necessity
Right.
to keep on the shelf.
I mean, we were getting people off cigarettes, main important thing, but just we didn't really figure out the game. We didn't really. It wasn't until basically we started listening to what people wanted more than what we knew was better for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
People would come in, you know, I want this. Well, if we didn't have that, but we knew we had something better, they'd just walk out the door.
Yeah.
But they'd come in, I want this. We don't sell that. Okay, let's leave. Well, finally it just clicked to us. We're like, wait a minute. We need to just start carrying whatever they come in and ask for.
Right.
So once we got on that gravy train, it all worked. But along the way, we've had fights. We had a fight with Big Tobacco in 2019 at that point. That was the whole Juul thing. But before that, the Juul was part of the program, 2016, 17.
Right. Well, let's go to 2017. We pick up steam. 2018, you and I meet. Well, maybe it was even 2019 because it was
19.
I walked into Vaper Forge for the first time in, I believe it was October of 2018. What had happened was I was working for Crawford Broadcasting, Superstation 101.1, which Leland had essentially gotten me the job over there. I get over there in spring, actually summer of 2016, and by summer of 2018, we get word from management is, hey, your job's going to be gone in 2 months. Don't say anything about it on air, or you will lose your what is your package when you live whatever it's called. I can't even remember.
Right.
So we have to, for 6 to 8 weeks, have to go on air and do a radio show knowing that we're about to lose our job. In the meantime, Trish and I came up with the concept of doing a podcast, which, as you see, is still going on today. And we start shopping around. We know nothing about doing a podcast, at least that day and age. And so we start shopping around for some equipment. We're over at Bailey Brothers looking at soundboards and things of that nature. And we come out of Bailey Brothers after kind of looking around. We're basically going to take what's it called, a compensation package? What's the name of that? When you get fired, they let you go and they give you a certain amount of money.
Severance pay.
Severance pay, that's it.
Right.
So we have decided, hey, I'm going to take my severance and I'm going to invest all of that money into podcast equipment. So we're at Bailey Brothers checking on all that. We go back out to the car. Trish has locked her keys in the car. And I'm like, this is fantastic. We call AAA. They're going to come unlock the car. And she's like, well, there's a vape store over there. And I was vaping at the time. And I was like, well, that's perfect. Let's go in there. And this is a time when vape stores had couches and everything else. And you can kind of hang out. And we walk in. It's like right at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And we're like, what time do you guys close? They're like, we're actually closing right now. I was like, that's okay. Our keys were locked in the car. And we were just trying to waste some time until they get here. And they're like, nah, y'all come on in. We'll keep the doors open until the people come to get your car unlocked. And I thought that was super cool that these guys who probably wanted to get home after working all day, they're going to keep the doors open for these two strangers that are just trying to waste time. And in fact, they do. I remember it was Eric who just recently moved to Hawaii. They let us in there and hung out with us until AAA got there and unlocked the car. And after that, I was like, man, that was so cool of them. That needs to be my new vape store. And so I start shopping only at Vaper Forge. And over time, I end up meeting Tony. And then the rest is history, where we end up being good friends. He's
really picky with his flavors.
I really am.
I didn't even know he was like a radio guy at first. I was just talking to him when he come by. And he's like, I'm real picky with flavors. So it got to the point, he even got to see what I was doing for a while. I'm like, we need to find you a flavor. Sometimes I'd throw him a bottle. Be like, here, try this one. If you don't like it, I don't feel bad because you didn't pay for it. I mean,
Yeah.
so you got to kind of witness what I used to do.
We did, and then because of him, I got to learn a lot about the vape industry, our battles with big tobacco, which we've been over on the radio show many
Good
of
Lord.
times. And during that time, Tony learned I was doing this podcast, and he as you've heard his life story, he's very adamant about big ideas, and so he's seen that in this podcast, even to this day. And then comes what we mentioned earlier, the job at 99.5, which we were jockeying for. From the time I left 101, the number one goal was to get to the only other live and local talk station, which was 99.5. Mm-hmm. And I was filling in all the time and all this kind of stuff. Took 3 years to get there, but we finally got there. But that's how me and Tony met. And the rest is history.
I saw potential in this man. I saw the podcast. I didn't even know he was radio until Eric told me. And I went and looked at it one night, and I'm like, okay, this guy kind of seems open-minded like myself. And I'm an original conspiracy guy. I'm not afraid to go around and tell everybody about the times that Alex Jones was right or,
right.
Things like that. So just the fact that he would listen to me, I'd start talking to him and tell him what I thought about things. And he'd be like, let me look into that. And he'd look into it. And mostly people would just kind of laugh at me before.
Well, when it came to that point in time as well, is I kind of needed something to look up to on the political aspect of things because I had lost I don't want to say I lost my drive because we kept up with the podcast stuff, but I was so far behind the curve on that front, and I had just lost, being at 101 and only getting to be there for 2 years. That was my first big boy radio job, so I felt like I had reached the pinnacle and then had it ripped away from me within 2 years. So it was a really weird time for me.
Well, see, when I first saw you, I thought, this guy has potential to go places. When he's passionate, when he is pissed off, whatever you want to call it, and there's an issue you know a lot about and you talk about it, it's very powerful. So there's a lot. I saw lots of just like scouting a baseball player. You go and you watch him play, and then if you happen to see that miracle arm throw from the outfield, you rate him on his throwing arm. You rate him a 4 or 5. I'm just using baseball as another analogy. So I was kind of scouting you out. I'm like, does this guy have potential, or am I just going to waste time? And it wasn't, you're my friend too. I was talking to you before that, but I actually okay, I think this guy might go places, and I'd already been listening to 99.5 before that. So they were already my station, and I loved the station. So I was just hoping that you'd get the job there, but I wasn't really planning on it. It was just kind of like a bonus, but I knew something would work out sometime, because when you sit around, and this is getting kind of lengthy, so I want to get into some things I've learned. If you ever want to do a business or something, don't ever force anything. Don't, if we sit here right now, let's start a business. What can we do?
Yeah.
Right there. That's bad. That is just a stupid idea. You got the opportunity.
Don't do it just to do it.
If it comes along, when you force things, it doesn't work. When you're sitting around looking and keeping your ears open, opportunities present themselves, and then you take advantage of those opportunities. That's just my experience in life. Another thing I like to tell people is to do things for yourself first. I always had the philosophy to go around and buy people's lunches. I like helping people. I've always enjoyed doing that. Even when I didn't have much, I did things like that. Always bought people's lunches along the way, friends. Never expected anything in return. But sometimes if you can't help yourself and you're really depressed in life, you got to focus on yourself. And yeah, it does feel good to do things for other people, but don't kill yourself trying to do it. I practically damn near killed myself trying to help my own mother when there was really nothing I could do in the first place, but I stressed myself out. So I was more worried about everybody else. So sometimes you got to sit back and actually be selfish and say, hey, I need to take my vitamins. Hey, I need to drink my water. Hey, I need to go walking. So I try to remember to do that and preach it too. Another thing I learned that helped me out in life was thinking backwards. When I went to a seminar in Vegas when I was 19, I paid $5,000 to go out to the seminar, and I saw this guy. His name was Don. I won't give you his last name, but I saw him on TV after that. I also met some of the producers of the Cheech and Chong show when I was in Las Vegas. Yeah, met a few people there. 19 years old, gambling along with the adults. They had no idea. So I paid all that money, and I learned how to think backwards at this seminar. And I also saw on the Oprah Winfrey show, she mentioned thinking backwards around the same time. I wasn't meaning to watch that, by the way, but I saw Harpo Productions, and that was her name spelled backwards. And that's where I learned she knew the secret about thinking backwards. And what I mean by thinking backwards is you got to think there's an investor head and there's a consumer head. My dad, when I was a young kid, told me never to buy anything close to the register because that's the stuff they're trying to sell to you. It's their junk. That's where they make all their profits at. They buy things for pennies and they sell them for $1 kind of thing. So the backwards thinking comes if you see an ad on TV and it's for, whatever. I don't think about the consumer. Do I want to get that? I look at the production. Where's the lighting? What time of day is it? What channel? Are there old people listening right now? I remember seeing all the depressing things at 2 a.m. late on Comedy Central, depressing commercials because I was depressed at the time. And, you see, but that time of night, you see lots of things on IRS debt,
right.
Things like that. So I figured out the whole game. Thinking backwards gets you so far. Why you can go as far as, the opposite of evil is live. There's so many things that along the way. And if it wasn't for thinking backwards, I wouldn't be in Alabama. I wouldn't, I just tried to think outside the box. Speaking of that, I met the guy that invented the think outside the bun. The guy who came up with that slogan. I met him at a car wash in Clearwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, Taco Bell guy.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, think outside the bun.
That's pretty funny.
Knew that guy. Evil Knievel came in that same day.
Anyway,
sorry. Yeah, it goes on and on. So the other thing I would say, I know it's getting late. Smart person learns from their own mistakes. Genius learns from everybody else's. I try to not be around negative people. I don't like downers, and I don't like the "what have you done for me lately" people. I've helped out lots of people in my life, and I've had a few people along the line where I've helped out, and next thing you know, I stop helping out because I got something going on. Next thing you know, I'm getting bad mouthed, and I'm like, I don't need these people in my life.
I'm with you on that front. There's the one characteristic, one personality trait that will drive me absolutely nuts is people that are ungrateful.
Yeah, and they don't even have to show it. It's just when you do, like, it's that old saying, if you give somebody $1 every day, the homeless man, he's going to expect it, and eventually he's going to kill you if you don't give him that $1.
He's going to be pissed if you stop giving him the $1.
So, yeah, that was my thing. I bought a lot of lunches. That was my own I don't know why I did it. I just did it. It made me feel good. If somebody was down, buy lunch. Just do that. Didn't matter how much money I had in the bank or if I had none. I figured it out. And I have been broke, bankrupt, been down in the dumps. Time is money. We only all have so much time. There's nothing more important than time. When I think about money, I really think about time now. That's just kind of key. A person's life, ages like 1 through 7 or 8, that structure will set the tone of everything. If you have a child's life at an early age, and that structure's there before they become a young adult, before they go through puberty and all those things, they're going to be able to go through a lot more in life and not go home crying to mommy. If I didn't have the structure I had with things I went through in my early 20s and things like that, super bad things. I mean, scammed, depressed, suicidal. I mean, you name it. I went through it and I battled. But if I did not have that structure that I got as a young child,
I would
have never, ever made it. And that's what, it made me wake up in the morning and, it was so important for people. I can't stress that enough. I also make it a point to try to watch something funny before bed. Over the years, I was told that watching like scary movies or something bad or an evil documentary, right before you go to sleep, you're generally going to have bad thoughts, bad dreams. Wake up not in as good a mood if you saw Dave Chappelle show.
Right.
Speaking of Dave Chappelle, I'm running through some stuff. Things over my life. South Park, awesome. Sopranos, Chappelle show. Those right off the top. Like if you think of things I've seen that I love.
That's good advice. I've never really thought about that, but it is absolutely true. If you have a bad dream, it'll set your tone for your day.
So you can ask my wife. I've probably seen just about every South Park episode 50 times, and I'm not exaggerating. I used to fall asleep to it every night just because it was funny, and I liked the humor, and I memorized just about every episode. And, and the Chappelle show I use as a personal gauge for friends. I only have so many friends, I have lots of acquaintances and people I know, but I mean, as personal friends, I use the Chappelle show as a gauge. If somebody doesn't like the Dave Chappelle show kind of thing, I can't hang out with you.
Especially if they get offended by Dave Chappelle. That's a red flag.
I can't do that. So what have you done for me lately, people, and the people that can't stand Dave Chappelle, it's kind of funny to say it that way, but it's true. And I mentioned along the way, I had lots of just bowling, pool, darts, softball leagues, I got to tell you real quick, I was an accidental hand model for the car wash. I was on every manager magazine training guide for the book that everybody got for years. My hands still might even be on it, but I was at this car wash thing in Houston, and I had my hands on this buffer, and there's this lady going around taking pictures of people. And she took a picture of my hands over the car before I knew it, and I didn't think anything of it. And about a year and a half later, I'm training this manager at our location, and I'm looking at this magazine. I'm like, because just a big set of hands on the front. It would say Mr. Car Wash, and I have a big set of hands with a buffer on top of a car. That's all. You didn't see my face. You didn't see anything. Color of my shirt, nothing. Hands. I'm looking at him, and I'm looking down at my hands, and I'm like, by God, these are my hands. And then I'm like, I remember that lady took that picture of me that one time.
You didn't make a dime off that.
No, I didn't make anything. I even asked about it, You
can make a lot of money off OnlyFans these days for stuff like that.
Just because she thought I had nice hands. I don't have bad hands. I'm not like, Trump with the small fingers and stuff or whatever. But that was interesting. So I was the accidental hand model. I got to tell you real quick, the Superman, I know we've talked about this, and I almost didn't get to discuss it. The wife said it was okay. But I dressed up, for Halloween one year, and I don't dress up for Halloween. This is the last time I dressed up.
Yeah, I've never seen you.
Yeah, I don't do it.
For anything.
This was the one time I chose to do it, but when I do it, I want to go all out. Okay, so this is the one thing I almost said it because someday I might want to run for mayor somewhere, and if this gets me in trouble, this happened a long time ago, and it was a joke. So I dressed up as Superman in the wheelchair, full
Christopher Reeves.
I had my mom's wheelchair up there. I had the straw coming up into my mouth, and I had the Superman suit on, and had my friend Joey wheeling me around. And I was on a bowling league. So it was Halloween night. Well, when it was time to bowl, I started out using the handicap bowling thing. I'd roll it down. Well, that didn't work out so well. I had to get up to bowl. But these people at the other end of the line, there was this older group of people, and they got super offended, okay? I guess because I was really acting. I really wanted to play like Superman.
They could tell you weren't really in that wheelchair.
Oh, of course, because I pull up, boom, and sit back down and be all, duh, and with a straw in my mouth, like, get me I need like a little orphan or something.
Right.
Or, whatever. So I'm acting like he's in the wheelchair. And then the head manager comes out there and says, sir, can you get rid of the wheelchair? You can dress up as Superman, but this is a little too much. He just died. I'm like, really? No, I'm not. I'm here. I paid money. I paid money to come. I showed up. I'm here. I'm both my friends. Who am I hurting right now?
This is discrimination.
No, I was just like, who am I hurting? Well, those people over there in their league, they don't like it. I'm like, why are they paying attention to me? Well, you're in a Superman suit and you're on a wheelchair, and the guy just died. And
right.
It hadn't been a year, but
right.
But it was irony to me. So, long story short, I wouldn't get out of the wheelchair. And then I went back to bowling with the thing where the ball like rolls down it and then goes down the middle. And my team got upset with me because of the score. So I couldn't like get a higher score, but I went with it because I was so determined to stay in the character.
Competitiveness.
Once they made the complaint, it was game on. So I stayed focused, kept my grip, and I'm like, I'm not getting out of this damn chair anymore. So I even played it off. Next thing you know, the cops show up. There's 2 cops. Walk in. Sir, will you get out of that wheelchair? And I'm like, I'm crippled. I can't. And I'm still in character talking to these cops. And they're like, they don't like your, they want you to leave, or they want you to get out of the chair, or you got to leave. That's how it went down. They didn't ask me to leave at first. And I said, no, I'm staying in my chair. I need my chair because I'm crippled. And he's like, they saw you bowl. And I was like, that was when I broke character. This is Halloween. I'm sticking to my script.
It's not illegal.
And he says, well, you're going to have to leave then. We're going to have to escort you out. And sure enough, Joey wheeled me out front. The cops right behind me. I stayed in the chair all the way till we got to the car. And I was yelling, this isn't justice, on my way out the door. And everybody was watching.
You weren't drinking or anything?
No.
You're just...
No, actually, there was beer on the table and I had some sips, but it was Halloween. And I was driving that night, so I couldn't.
You were just standing up for
I love the idea, and we went all out with the black duct tape and the straw to the mouth.
So did your team get upset that you got kicked out?
I think they thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Like, we were upset because nobody had a camera. We just went there and we were bowling, and it was like bowling league night, you know? It was a Wednesday night. It was just happened to fall on Halloween that night. We were all like...
If you could do life over, you would keep a camera on you at all times, wouldn't you?
I do now. It's in my car. It's at front, back, things I've seen, you know, like, you know, my house and the business, there's cameras everywhere,
Right,
you know?
right.
But that's one incident. I wasn't really proud of it because after it happened... Sorry, I was on the microphone. After it happened, I saw all the older people at the other end, and I saw the look on this one lady's face. I'll never forget it. Like, she was really disgusted by me. But
listen, if that's the worst decision you ever made, then you're doing pretty good.
Well, anyway, that was something that was talked about for a long time. Like, but it was talked about until I moved. That went on for a few years. Like, my friends would bring it up all the time.
You had to move because
be
of
somewhere.
it.
Well, they'd just be like, "Remember that time you dressed as handicapped Superman?" I'm like, "Oh, geez."
Right.
So there was that. Another time, when I was playing baseball, I went to a baseball game, and on the way walking from the car to the field, we were all as a team in a line with parents and kids. I was in the 8th grade, playing at the high school field. And we walked over this bridge on this creek. It was from the parking lot to the field. And as we were walking over this bridge, this was in Belleville, Illinois, I smelled this really bad smell. This was a Saturday afternoon, about 12:30. And I said, "You guys smell that?" "Yeah." "You know, what is that? That's horrible." And we kept walking. And the parent behind me, Mr. Rosberg, said, "It's probably a dead animal." And I was like, "Man, that's horrible." And I couldn't get that smell out of my head. Well, we went home. Came to school Monday, and it was all over the papers. The janitor, the superintendent of that school, the janitor guy, he found a dead body underneath that bridge, and it was a Belleville News Democrat, that same paper that wrote that damn article about me. It was a journalist from that paper, and she was out jogging the trails at the high school, and her dead body was underneath that bridge for like days.
Jeez.
So we smelled a dead body. And it got played off as a dead animal, and then the janitor found it the next day because the smell was just like, oh my god! So it rotted out there.
That's brutal.
Yeah, so that was really weird. I'm trying to think of like strange things that I've seen. I've had 2 attorneys that turned into judges. My mom dated a member of the Bush family, not George Bush, but Bush beer, and ironically enough, my dad's cousin Wally, his daughter married a Bush family member. They have lots of money, and they travel from St. Louis to Tampa Bay all the time.
How about that?
Yeah, I told you about Javier Arenas. You brought that up. I once got in trouble at the restaurant because I had a marketing genius. You know, I like the marketing stuff. And we had a thing. They were tossing your salad, okay? So you come in, and the idea was come in and we can toss your salad for you. That was a promotion. So we were in charge of our own reader board out in front of the street, and we were a busy highway. We were the number 1 Fazoli's in the country. There was like 260 stores.
Yeah.
So we were number 1 sales, like 40-something grand a week, you know, big time. Lots of cars. So I put out front, because we were promoting salad tossing, right? I put, "Let us toss your salad today," with an exclamation point, and I spelled it with lettuce, like Lettuce.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be as the joke.
Right.
That was up there for about 5 days, and my boss called me, and I pretended to not know what he was talking about.
Yeah.
He called me. He's like, "You need to take that off the sign right now." You know, and he's like freaking out. I
Why
go,
is that,
"Why,
boss?
Why? We're promoting salad tossing this week or this month."
You don't like your salad toss, boss?
It was the flavor of the month, as we called it, you know, because of the promotional deals.
Yeah.
It was a big chain. We were tossing salad for that month. So I wanted to make it funny and put it on the board. Well, some lady called the corporate store, you know, but he calls me and he's like, "I need you to take that down." I'm like, "Why?" "You know why." "No, I don't know why." Are we tossing salad this month or not? And I knew the whole time what I was talking about, but I pretended I didn't. So it made the whole conversation really, like, he did not like me, that conversation. Because I'm like, "No, I'm not going to just take it down unless you tell me what you mean."
Well, fine. Why don't you come down here and toss my salad?
Yeah. But people were coming in, thought it was funny. These guys would come in and be like, "I want that lady back there to toss my salad." You know, it's saying,
Right.
And it was a thing. You know, like if you have a car wash, you put things rimmed up,
Right.
stuff like that. The marketing stuff. I was always a fan of marketing. For the car wash, I was on TV commercial in Florida. I don't know if I told you that on this broadcast, but I was on commercials, sitting at home eating dinner, and I'd see myself pitching their car wash thing. I didn't even want to do it, and they made me do it. Let's see. Other things, I've easily hired, if not interviews. I was on the Fazoli's Fit team. We went to different Fazoli's locations. I interviewed probably a couple thousand people in my life. I've hired over 1,000 easily. I've let a lot of people go, but I've never fired anybody. They fired, see that on the Magic car wash detailing? That was only taken because, and that's a rust that went onto the picture. That was only taken because I knew nobody would believe me. I was on a vacation and I saw that and I was like, I better get a picture. Nobody's going to believe me. And I had a lot of instances.
And it was just a random car wash that says hand job, $10.
$10. On the other side, I couldn't find the other picture in time, but it said in and out $20. You know, I thought that was like, that's interesting.
That's why lettuce toss your salad was perfectly appropriate.
But it was up there and you didn't see the cops at the place, and it gave me the idea to do the other things along the way.
Yeah.
So just little marketing things. For a while there, I forgot to mention, I was an environmental tech. Right after I left Fazoli's, before I moved to Florida, I hadn't quite decided I was going to move to Florida. I became an environmental technician, cleaning up horse manure out of a racetrack, making a lot of money actually with this big development. And we were finding things deep in the ground that we weren't supposed to be finding. And that's really all I can tell you about it.
Wow.
Yeah. It was I can tell you, Fairmount Park Racetrack, Collinsville, Illinois. And it was an area near there, and they were dumping for years things they weren't supposed to be dumping.
Oh.
Yes. And I've got pictures I could prove it with, but there was lots of lawsuits, and I signed
you don't want to go back to court.
Non-disclosure. So, yeah, that's a true story. Over the years, what numbers, I've got this nick for numbers, and almost a photographic memory. I remember details. I remember things I did, like, every day. I remember how many steps it took to get to the bus stop when I was a kid because I counted.
You've told me before that you've counted tiles on the floor.
Yeah.
Like, you know how many tiles are.
I was just sitting there waiting for my sandwich at a Subway, and I look around. I'm like, I don't know how many square feet's in this damn place.
Right.
Right. But, yeah, so I suffered anxiety, depression. I got robbed one time at a bank at the car wash. That is the first time that I actually needed a pill for my anxiety. That was my breaking point. Before I met my wife, Amy, my previous personal person that I can't talk about other people, she used me and put me, I don't do social media because she used me she made up a MySpace page in my name and pretended to be me for about 1.5 years. And have I told you about that?
Yes.
She went 1.5 years, pretended to be me with all my old friends. This is after I just moved to Florida. Okay. So she came to Florida with me, started a MySpace page to talk to all my old friends from St. Louis. And like, as time went on, these friends of mine stopped talking to me.
She proceeded to ruin all your relationships.
Yeah. It's like kind of buzz off type thing. And she pretended to be me. And there's this whole page and she knew I liked South Park and
it was back before catfishing was a thing.
Right. And she even would talk to her own family and pretend she was me.
Yeah.
Like, and I found about all this on accident because I was at the car wash one day and somebody said, hey, I like that picture you posted. And I'm like, what?
And back then, none of that made sense.
No.
Because that was never a thing. It was new technology per se. No. And it's, that's bizarre.
I'll never forget it. I'm up front wiping a car off to get a customer, send him out. And this employee walked up, remember him too. He said, hey, I like that picture you posted. I'm like, what picture? And where and what are you talking about? And he goes, your MySpace page. I go, I don't have a MySpace page. And I go, do you have one? And he goes, yeah. And I go, what's
Let me see it.
I'm like, what's MySpace? And we were at work, so we didn't, we didn't have cell phones with smart and all that. We couldn't check it out. I had to get home and look. But I asked, I didn't know what he was talking about. And there was a picture he mentioned showed me and Nick Hogan together at the car wash. So my
she
girlfriend
put a lot
at the
of
time,
effort into it.
Yeah, she really, psychotic, dude. Really bad. So that was just another thing that ruined it for me. That's why I'm not on Facebook. That's not what that lost a lot of relationships. And I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about like personal friends through the years. I fought through the whole baseball chess thing. I got that off my back. And then I have that internet company I tried, which failed. Then I had to shake that off. And then we move. And then lo and behold, I'm getting all my friends told to buzz off, and I got a new life in Florida. And, I found it that carried on for years. There was a lot of damage that I didn't know right away, or else I'd have broke up with her right away.
Right.
But it carried on. I'd come back home to visit St. Louis. I'd be in a Walmart, and someone would be like, hey, how's the wife and kids? And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And they're like, well, it was on your page. I'm like, oh, no, here we go again.
Yeah. Social media is dangerous.
So that happened to me. I told you I don't take any pictures. I'm so bad at it. My wife hates me for that. But I'll never remember to take a picture unless somebody forces me to. It's because I got it all up here, man. I don't need a picture to remind me of what it is. I've been all around this country. I mean, where have I been? New York City, Twin Towers, San Francisco, Niagara Falls, Florida, Texas. I've probably been in roughly 30 of the 50 states, maybe 31 or 2.
Right.
There's a picture of Joey at the bottom. Yeah, dude, that's just one symbol. We did this to multiple people, but the pranks, whoever falls asleep first, the full duct tape, marker job, shaving cream.
You used to love doing
that was a picture that made it to the cut to get on TV, on this thing. So that was actually a light, however you want to call it, a light abuse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Light prank.
That's the same kid, Joey, that wheeled me out in Superman costume at St. Clair Bowl.
Nice.
Yeah. I felt bad. He got to go right back in though, but I wasn't.
Not Christopher Reeves. He had to go home.
I could have just gotten out of the chair and did it, but I was like past. You know what I'm saying? Like I just had to do it. I'm like, nope. If I'm getting kicked out, and I think I even got counted for a 0. I didn't bold my last game yet, so they put a 0 for
all
my
or
score.
nothing, man.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, there's other stuff too.
That's an eventful life, though.
Oh, I've done all those interviews. I had one interview in my life I purposely bombed on, only because I felt so bad for the people because they had worked really hard to hire me. This was after the car wash business. I was already at Vaper Forge, and there was another chain around town that Mr. Car Wash almost bought out, and then he backed out. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I go and I do this interview, and they liked me and all that, and they called me back for the second interview because this is when we weren't making any money yet at the Forge. So he called me back for the second interview, and once I got to the second interview, I was like, I do not want to do this again. But I felt so bad, I went through the interview anyway.
We've all been there.
And I've never bombed any interview I've ever had. I got offered the job. I just naturally this is what I want to do. I'm focused. Boom. So I go in there and I'm like, I need to bomb this interview. And I learned all these tricks over the years of things to say, So I'm like, it was like a production. I wish there would have been video of this interview. Like it would have been gotten clicks. I was like, they're like, at the end, I could tell he was just like, man, this is horrible.
Right.
And he says, one more question, and he asked me, have you read these books? Yeah. Where does the buck stop? And the answer is the customer. I could have told right away. I'm like, customer.
Right.
And I said, me.
Nice.
I did right at the end.
Nice.
And he just looked at me and I was like, yes. So, because I knew all those people.
Right.
And that was my way of getting out of it.
I'm not big on doing interviews on the radio, and I've often felt like I thought to myself, hey, if I'm forced into an interview, I'll just make it so horrible that nobody ever wants to come on my show again, and then I can continue on to just do what I do. Because you know how I operate.
Oh, yeah. And this is the only interview I've ever done where it wasn't for a job.
Right.
So, in fact, there's probably stuff my wife didn't even know that I've talked about. But it's grew me who I am now. What I do currently, today, I like looking at stocks. I like financial stuff. I'm very involved, sort of politically, obviously. I deal with a lot of, grandkids. I like life. I feel like I'm ready for another chapter with something, meaning there might be another opportunity right around the corner. We've been thinking about possibly doing a couple other types of businesses, something where it's not political every year and you think they're going to take you out. I want to have something steady,
right?
Like a car wash or a restaurant, kind of thing. I like what the Chubb Father's got going on, but I don't want to go and call it the Chubb Brother and put it right next door.
The Chubb Forge.
Yeah. But I like his business. I get it. I get the whole restaurant, front to back, everything from the TP to the warehouse, the wholesalers.
Right.
I get all that business stuff, and it's just like anything else. It's just like riding a bike.
Well, the reason I invited you to do this is because you're one of the most interesting people that I know, and you've been through a lot of stuff. But it's what's fascinating to me outside of all the stories is just the person that you are, and hear that backstory on why you are the way you are. Because you're not an average guy. You're not a normal person. And it's because of the way you view everything. And I think now the audience kind of understands why you view things the way you do. And it's resulted in you being successful. You and Amy both.
Yeah, with certain things, yes, because you learn from your mistakes and everything else. It's also stopped me from... Me doing this interview right now is kind of facing one of my fears, and it's fear from like those news articles. And, I've had it to where something gets out in public and all it takes is one person... that knows you or something. And, I didn't want to come here and start talking about people that I knew in my past. That's why I was real careful with who I was saying.
Names,
because there's been lawsuits. I've had a gun to the back of my head at one point, but I can't talk about it here.
Right.
Things like that, like real stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I've been close to suicide before. After my mom died, I've had a couple people. My aunt saved my life. I called her one time, and she talked me out of it. I was driving home from my mom's grave, and it was a long stretch of highway, and there was this bridge, and I seriously thought about it. But I tell you, if it wasn't for the structure, if it wasn't for the beginning and the love as a child, I wouldn't have. Chickened out wouldn't be the word. I wasn't afraid. Once your mother dies or father or something like that, you're not afraid as much anymore. Like that was the biggest, like if anybody said, what was the biggest difference after your mom died, I'd say, I'm not afraid of death. She just went through the whole thing right in front of me. I held her hand at the end. So once that happened, it was like, what is it? All this stuff is it's just stuff.
Well, and I think if there's one thing to take away from this show, for those of you that are listening, is especially for parents, is don't take those first few years for granted. Really put in the effort, because there's going to be a lot of us that regret not doing things in those early years with your child that builds them into who they want to be. Because every one of us as parents, we have expectations. From the day your kid's born, you've got expectations for what your kid is going to be when he grows up or when she grows up. And most of that is going to be dictated by those early years, as we heard with your story.
Yeah.
And it's going to mold them into who they end up being.
Yeah, and it's not a particular story about anybody or anything at this point. It's just something that happened to me. I just happened to have the right structure at the very beginning, and it helped me out later in life when things got really tough. I wasn't afraid to move to Florida and try a whole new career. I wasn't afraid to go to Vegas. I wasn't afraid to go to Silicon Valley and talk to people that were worth 10,000 times what I had in the bank, kind of thing. I wasn't afraid to sit down in front of 16 FBI agents or former and then pitch a business idea as a 20-year-old startup internet company where these people could, I didn't understand the true magnitude of that, but it was like a practical joke at the time. But I wasn't fearful of that. I have more anxiety issues now where if I'm in like a long line somewhere, oh my God, I can't stand it. Finding a parking space when there's no parking, those little things still get to me. But, everybody has their stuff. But I really want to just get out certain points. Just everybody's different. Everybody has their own thing. I don't judge. I just try to help people as much as I can, do the best I can in life, and just try to be nice. And those are things that help me out. The thinking backwards, thinking things through. Learning from other people's mistakes, doing research. I like to find answers. I want to know who control. When I was a kid, my dad in St. Louis, we just moved to St. Louis. He took me to the Federal Reserve Bank in St. Louis. And I asked him, he said, they get to set the interest rates for the whole country. And I asked him, why do they get to do that? And who put them in charge of that? And he didn't know how to answer that question. And that's why I took the deep dive into the banking system and learned how it really works. It was just because my dad didn't know something. And it kind of struck me like, how does my dad not know about the bank?
Because you think your dad knows everything.
Right.
Growing up.
But he knew that they set the interest rate. And I'm like, well, how did that happen? And he didn't tell me about the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, which is really the beginning point of the downfall. But anyway, that's all for your regular show. But
well,
that's why I support this guy, because he understands what I've been talking about, and he gets it.
And that's something we'll do at a different time as
right,
well.
Right.
I wanted to make sure this was concentrated on you.
I know. But if you're going to talk about me, though, you got to mention it once.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that you and I could probably talk about for hours. So I just thank you for coming over and doing this.
I hope it was entertaining for people. I'm not in show business. I'm not in the public eye. I have no desire to be famous whatsoever. I just try to support this guy. And, I'm just trying to spread some love out and just share a story or two. Everybody's got their own story.
Yeah, for me to get Tony to talk in front of people, especially tell a story, it's not an easy thing to do. So I appreciate you taking the leap and coming over here and doing this. And I know people are going to enjoy it, getting to know who you are and kind of how you got where
I'm already
you are.
Like, what kind of trouble am I going to get in tomorrow?
Here comes
what
the
did
backlash.
I say at what time? So.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm very excited to see where this podcast leads, because we got a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of new guests.
It was kind of like Rogan, dude, with 2 hours and 14 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
They do those for like 3-4 hours.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some that 3.5-4 hours long on Rogan's show.
Well, I like it because we actually get to break down a few things, but I mean, you got to consider, I didn't have much notice, and I pretty much had to rewind my whole life in my head and put it on paper.
Well, in these situations, it's why Rogan takes some guys and he'll have them on multiple times. Because there's never, no matter how long the podcast is, there's never any way to get everything out there.
Yeah.
So we'll do it again in the future, and I think it'll be good.
Yeah, we could do a vape one or a fed one. But
yes,
this is the most I've ever told. This is it. This was unfiltered, guys. I don't know what else to tell you. This is what I know, and this is who I am. Sorry, there's some stories I can't tell you, but that's just how it is in life.
That's just how it is, cuz. Yeah. Well, all right, we're out of here. Thank y'all so much for supporting this podcast. Make sure you go support Vaper Forge and go support our friends at Wild Hair Jerky as they get started as well.
Wild Hair Jerky.
These are the guys that make this stuff happen. So we appreciate it. And until next time, see you, cuz.